Hello everyone, I know you are going to use this video for falling asleep, so before that, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know where you are from. Also, what time is it? You're too late. The light from the hallway dimmed, and I was swallowed by darkness once more. The cold hit me like a wave, dragging me down deeper into the blackness. I could feel the weight of time itself pressing against me, like I was being sucked into a void that didn't care if I existed. My body trembled, numb and unresponsive, as if it no longer belonged to me. My thoughts scattered like leaves in the wind, disjointed and incoherent. There was no sound, no movement, just the suffocating dark. And then, light. Blinding, piercing light. I snapped my eyes open, gasping for air, as if I had been underwater for far too long. My lungs burned with the sudden rush of breath, but the world around me was still distorted. The light above me flickered, an old-fashioned bulb hanging precariously from a low ceiling, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch impossibly far. I rubbed my eyes, trying to clear the fog in my mind. Where was I now? The warehouse had been replaced by a sterile room, a small, claustrophobic space with peeling wallpaper and a faint, musty odor of mildew. The furniture was sparse, mismatched, and old. A worn-out armchair sat in one corner, and a wooden table stood against the far wall, littered with papers and dusty books. I stood up, my legs unsteady beneath me, the room tilting slightly as I took my first few steps. I needed to think, to process what was happening. The strange figure from before, had it been real? A warning, or just another piece of the puzzle, but my mind felt too fragmented to focus. I could barely keep track of my own thoughts, let alone figure out what was going on. Suddenly, a voice broke through the silence, cutting through the fog in my brain like a knife. "You found it." I spun around, heart racing, but there was no one. No figure, no shadow, just the oppressive stillness of the room. "You found it," the voice repeated, this time more insistent. It was low, rasping, like it came from deep within the walls. "The device, the machine, it's calling to you. You're the only one who can stop it." My chest tightened as I struggled to grasp the meaning of the words. The device, the machine, it had to be what was causing all of this. But how could I stop it if I didn't even understand what it was? "It's already too late," the voice continued, sending a chill through my spine. "The rupture has already begun. Time is unspooling, unraveling. And you're the thread that ties it all together. If you don't fix it, everything will collapse. The past, the present, the future, none of it will exist. It will all be gone." I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand answers. But instead, I found myself frozen, staring at the wall as though the room itself were pressing in on me. The words echoed in my mind, but I couldn't make sense of them. The room felt like it was closing in around me, the air thick with a sense of urgency and dread. I took a few tentative steps forward, moving toward the door at the far end of the room. My fingers grazed the doorknob, cold and metallic against my skin, and I hesitated for just a moment. "You need to understand," the voice urged. "Everything is connected. The device, the shadows, the people who are lost. They're all part of the same thing. And you." But before the voice could finish, a loud crash echoed through the room, cutting it off mid-sentence. I spun around, eyes wide, heart racing in my chest. The sound came from behind me, somewhere in the corner of the room where the shadows were the deepest. A figure appeared, moving quickly, its presence like a storm ripping through the stillness. But this wasn't the shadowy figure from before. This one was solid, corporeal, and it moved with an unsettling speed. I took a step back, my body screaming for me to run. The figure's features were indistinct, but there was something about the way it moved, the unnatural grace with which it flowed through the room that sent waves of terror crashing over me. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. My throat was dry, and my limbs felt weak. "You shouldn't have come here," The figure said, its voice low and rumbling, almost mechanical in its resonance. But now that you have, you're bound to it. It was as though the words themselves held weight, pressing down on my chest, crushing me under the force of their meaning. I felt a dizzying wave of helplessness wash over me. There was no escape. I was trapped in this place, caught between worlds, and there was nothing I could do to change it. You can't run from what you've unleashed. The figure continued. Time is broken, and you are the one who caused it. I staggered backward, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The figure moved toward me, its eyes, if it even had eyes, locked onto mine. The room seemed to bend around us, the walls warping as the space itself seemed to distort under the figure's presence. You think you can fix it. The figure's voice became a hiss, its words sharp and venomous. There's no fixing it. Not anymore. You should have stayed away. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my ears. My mind was a blur, trying to process what was happening, but I couldn't make sense of it. The figure advanced slowly, its form now fully solid, the shadows of its body stretching like claws in the dim light. You will never escape, it whispered, its voice now a chilling echo in the depths of my mind. None of us ever do. And with that, it lunged at me. The figure's lunge was swift, but I barely had time to react before it reached me. A force slammed into my chest, sending me crashing backward. I hit the cold floor hard, the air knocked out of my lungs. My heart raced in panic as I scrambled to push myself back up, but my limbs felt heavy, like I was wading through water. The figure stood over me, looming like a dark, suffocating presence. Its form was shifting, an amalgamation of shadow and something far more unnatural, something beyond the comprehension of human eyes. It reached out, its cold, skeletal hand hovering just inches from my face. You're not going anywhere, it whispered, its voice so soft it felt like a cold breath against my skin. The threads are tangled now. There's no way to undo what you've started. I gasped for air, panic flooding my mind as I pushed against the floor, trying to get away, but the figure's shadow twisted, wrapping around me like chains. I was paralyzed, unable to move, each breath feeling more labored than the last. You think you can fix time? The figure's voice was taunting, almost mocking, as it loomed over me. You think you can stop the collapse? You're nothing but a pawn in this game. Tears blurred my vision, and my throat tightened with fear. Every instinct told me to run, to fight, to do anything but lie here, trapped and helpless. But no matter how hard I struggled, I couldn't break free. The shadows binding me only grew stronger, their grip tightening with each passing second. The figure leaned in closer, its presence suffocating, its face now almost visible in the flickering light. It wasn't human. There was no humanity in its eyes, no emotion. Just an unyielding emptiness that seemed to stretch on forever. You should have stayed away, it hissed. But now you're part of the system that's falling apart, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. I opened my mouth to speak, to beg for mercy, but no sound came out. The figure's words echoed in my mind, each one reverberating through my thoughts like a drumbeat, drowning out any hope of reason. You were warned, it continued. You were warned about the consequences, and now you will suffer them. A cold, hollow laugh escaped from the figure's lips, reverberating in the small room. It was a sound that seemed to come from all around me, filling the space, twisting the air itself. I couldn't escape it. I couldn't escape anything. And then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the figure stepped back. The pressure on my chest lifted, but the darkness remained. My body trembled, exhausted from the struggle, from the fear, from the helplessness that clung to me like a second skin. I gasped for air, my heart thundering in my chest as I slowly pushed myself upright. The room felt colder, more oppressive than before. The figure was gone, but its presence lingered in the very air I breathed, suffocating me with its promise of doom. The walls seemed to close in on me, the room shrinking in size, becoming smaller with every passing second. I could feel the weight of time pressing down on me, its crushing force dragging me deeper into a reality I no longer understood. I had to escape. I had to do something. But where could I go? What could I do? I turned, my eyes scanning the room in frantic desperation. The door, hadn't it been right there? I had been so sure of it, but now it seemed to have vanished. The space before me an endless expanse of nothingness. Panic surged through me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I was trapped. And then, just as the walls seemed to close in completely, something changed. The air around me began to vibrate, a hum filling the room. It was faint at first, like the buzz of a distant insect. But it grew louder, more insistent. I looked around, trying to locate the source of the noise. But there was no one. No figure, no presence. Just the strange, mechanical hum filling the air. And then, as if by some unseen force, the room around me began to shift. The walls warped, twisting in on themselves, and the floor beneath me seemed to buckle. A blinding light erupted from the center of the room, flooding everything. My vision blurred, and for a moment, I thought I was going to lose consciousness. But then, a voice I knew all too well, cut through the chaos, sharp and clear. "It's not too late." I froze, my heart skipping a beat. The voice. It was the same one that had spoken to me before, the voice that had warned me. But this time, there was something different about it. Something urgent, something more desperate. "You still have a chance." I didn't understand. What was happening? What was this chance? The figure had said it was too late. The voice had said everything was falling apart. "Don't let it end like this," the voice urged. "You have to stop the device. You have to find it before it's too late. The collapse is real, but so is the way to fix it." The light flickered, and I saw a flash of something. Figure, distorted but familiar. It was me. Or, at least, a version of me, standing at the edge of the collapsing world. "You're the key," the voice whispered, its tone filled with both fear and hope. "You always have been." The light consumed everything, and I felt myself being pulled toward it. The blinding light swallowed everything. My mind felt like it was being torn apart, shredded by the intensity of the force pulling me toward it. I couldn't see, couldn't think, couldn't understand what was happening. It was as if the very fabric of reality itself was being twisted into something unrecognizable. But then, just as quickly as it had come, the light faded. I was no longer standing in the crumbling room, suffocated by its darkness and cold. Instead, I was somewhere else, somewhere different. The air around me felt thick and heavy, as though the world itself was holding its breath. I blinked, trying to make sense of my surroundings. Everything was still. The silence was deafening, and the landscape around me seemed frozen in time. I was standing on a cracked road, the asphalt broken and splintered as if it had been abandoned for years. The world stretched out before me, a desolate wasteland of ruined buildings and shattered remnants of a civilization long gone. A cold wind whipped through the empty streets, carrying with it a scent of decay, of something that had been left to rot and wither away. My heart pounded in my chest, the fear from earlier still lingering. The collapse was real. The world was dying. But what did it mean? What was I supposed to do now? "You found it." The voice came from behind me. I spun around, my breath catching in my throat. The figure was there again, the same dark, shifting presence I had encountered earlier. But this time, it was different. It wasn't just an embodiment of shadow. There was something more to it, something that made my skin crawl. The figure's eyes gleamed, but there was no warmth, no humanity in them. Just that same emptiness. It took a step forward, its form blurring, warping, as though it couldn't decide what it wanted to be. "You're not supposed to be here," it hissed, its voice like 1,000 whispers swirling around me. But here you are. The game is already in motion. The threads are tangled beyond repair. I took a step back, my legs shaking beneath me. I couldn't let it corner me again. I had to understand, had to find a way out. What are you talking about? My voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. What is this place? Why am I here? The figure tilted its head, studying me with an expression that was almost amused. You don't know, do you? The answer has been in front of you all along, but you were too blind to see it. I clenched my fists, frustration bubbling up inside me. Tell me what I need to do. I can't keep guessing. The figure laughed, a hollow, eerie sound that echoed in the empty streets. You think you have control over this. You think you can fix what's already broken. Time has already been rewritten. You're a part of it now. You always have been. My mind reeled. Rewritten time. The future. The voicemail. A sudden realization hit me like a punch to the gut. The voicemail. The voice that had warned me. It wasn't just some strange message from a future I couldn't comprehend. It was me. The voice was me. You're me. I gasped, the words barely escaping my lips. The figure's smile widened, but there was no joy in it. You could say that. I'm what you will become if you fail. I took a step back, a wave of dizziness crashing over me. My thoughts spun out of control, confusion taking over. I don't understand. What do I have to do? You have to stop the device, it said, its voice growing more distant, more echoing. The one that holds the threads of reality together. It's the only way to fix the unraveling. But don't be fooled. It's already too late for you. The figure's form flickered, distorting like a glitch in a video, and then it was gone. The wind howled in the empty streets, and the silence returned, thick and oppressive. I was alone again. But now the weight of its words pressed down on me more than ever. I had to stop the device, the one that was holding everything together. But how? And where? I turned, scanning the bleak landscape around me for any sign, any clue that would tell me where to go, what to do. But the more I looked, the more lost I felt. The world was crumbling. The remnants of a forgotten civilization scattered across the desolate road, and there was no way out. The ground beneath me trembled, the vibration so subtle at first that I almost thought it was my imagination. But then it grew stronger. The pavement cracked, and in the distance, I saw a flicker of movement. Something was approaching. Something fast. I didn't know if it was friend or foe, but I couldn't stay here any longer. I had to move, had to get away from the strange presence that still lingered in my mind. I had to find the device. With a burst of adrenaline, I turned and ran. The wind tore at my clothes, and the ground seemed to shift beneath my feet, the road bending and twisting in impossible ways. The landscape around me was warping, too, as though the very fabric of reality was starting to break apart. The noise behind me grew louder, the sound of something chasing me. I didn't dare look back. I couldn't. But then, through the haze of panic and confusion, I saw it. A building in the distance, its silhouette barely visible through the dust and smoke. It was tall, ominous, and I felt an inexplicable pull toward it. Was this the place? Was this where the device was? I pushed myself harder, my legs burning, my breath ragged as I ran toward the building. Whatever was behind me, whatever had been chasing me, it was getting closer, and I could hear its presence creeping up on me like a shadow, growing longer and longer. I had to reach the building. I had to. The building loomed larger with every step, a dark, imposing structure that seemed to stretch endlessly into the sky. My heart hammered in my chest, my breath ragged as I ran, but the feeling of being pursued was growing stronger. I couldn't shake the sensation that something, or someone, was just behind me. Its presence felt even in the air around me. The ground beneath my feet trembled once more, and I risked a quick glance over my shoulder. What I saw froze me in place. It was there, a silhouette, dark and shifting, moving toward me with an unnerving speed. The figure was like a shadow, its shape impossible to pin down, constantly shifting as if it couldn't decide what form it wanted to take. The edges of it blurred and faded, leaving behind nothing but the faintest trace of its existence before it reappeared in another spot, closer now. I gasped, pushing myself harder, my legs burning with exhaustion as I stumbled toward the building. I couldn't stop. I couldn't let it catch me. The building was getting closer, but the figure behind me was closing the distance just as fast. I could feel it now. Its presence was suffocating, as though it was absorbing the very air around me. I needed to reach the door. I had no choice but to reach the door. With a final burst of energy, I lunged toward the building's entrance, my hands trembling as I pushed against the heavy doors. They groaned, resisting at first, but then they gave way, swinging open with an eerie creak. I stumbled inside, slamming the doors behind me, heart pounding in my ears. The inside was dimly lit, the air thick with dust and decay. The walls were cracked, their surfaces stained with age, but the faintest glow came from deeper within the building, casting long, jagged shadows on the floor. The sense of being watched didn't fade, but it felt different now. I was inside, at least. I had a moment, maybe, to catch my breath. I pressed my back against the door, trying to steady my breathing. It was silent now, but I could still feel the presence. Something was waiting for me, and I knew deep down that I had to keep moving. The faint glow ahead beckoned, pulling me in with an almost magnetic force. I swallowed hard, steeling myself against the fear that threatened to rise. There was something about this place, this building, that felt wrong, as if it had been waiting for me, too. I stepped forward cautiously, my footsteps echoing in the emptiness. The silence was oppressive, but the glow grew brighter the farther I went, eventually revealing a set of metal doors at the end of the hall. They were sleek, almost futuristic, and they hummed with an energy I couldn't quite place. This was it. The device. I felt an uneasy rush of adrenaline. This was the moment I had been searching for. But something in the pit of my stomach told me that I wasn't ready. That the moment I opened those doors, everything would change. There would be no turning back. I hesitated for a heartbeat before reaching out and pushing the door open. It slid silently, revealing a vast chamber beyond. The device was there. It was massive, the size of a small building, glowing with a pulsing, unnatural light. It sat in the center of the room, suspended by a web of metallic tendrils, each one vibrating with energy. The device looked like a cross between a futuristic machine and some kind of ancient artifact. Its surface was smooth and metallic, yet covered in strange, intricate symbols that pulsed as if they were alive. I took a hesitant step forward, drawn to it by something deeper than curiosity. I couldn't explain why, but I knew that this was what I had been looking for. This was the key to fixing everything, or destroying it all. A low hum filled the room, a vibration that seemed to reach into my very bones. The air crackled with energy, and the closer I got, the more I felt it pressing in on me, as if the device itself was aware of my presence. I reached out, my fingers trembling as they brushed against the cool surface of the machine. The moment my skin made contact, a jolt of electricity shot up my arm, and a burst of visions flooded my mind. The future, the past, myself. It all collided in a whirlwind of fragmented images, memories, faces, places that didn't exist, events that hadn't happened yet. It was overwhelming, too much to comprehend. And then I saw it. The figure again, the one from the shadow, the one who had chased me. But this time, I saw what it truly was: not a dark, shifting figure, but a version of me. The future me. The one who had become everything I feared, everything I was trying to escape. The images continued, blurring, shifting, warping, until one final scene crystallized in front of me. I was standing in the same place, my hand still on the device. But in this vision, I was not alone. There was someone else with me. A person I couldn't recognize, their face obscured by the flickering shadows. They looked at me with a kind of sorrow, an expression that filled me with a deep, unshakable dread. The future me spoke. "It's already too late." The words echoed in my mind, repeating over and over again until I couldn't tell if I had heard them from the vision or if they were coming from somewhere inside me. The hum of the device intensified, and I pulled my hand away in a panic, stumbling backward. The chamber seemed to close in on me, the walls shifting as the air grew heavier, suffocating. I was trapped. Too late. The voice whispered again, only now it wasn't just the future me speaking. It was all of them. The shadows, the figures, the whispers. They were all converging, growing louder. And then I realized, the device wasn't here to fix anything. It was here to destroy everything. I stumbled backward, my breath shallow, a cold sweat drenching my skin. The hum of the device was deafening now, vibrating through my chest, through my bones. I pressed my hands to my ears, but it didn't help. The voice, the whispering shadows, they were all around me, inside me, growing louder with every passing second. "Too late," they said. Too late. I didn't know if I was losing my mind, or if this place, this cursed building, was really distorting reality around me. But it didn't matter. Nothing mattered anymore except for the need to get away. I had to get out. I had to leave. But there was nowhere to run. The room began to warp before my eyes, the walls bending like soft clay, stretching and shrinking as the air thickened with the weight of something ancient, something forgotten. The shadows in the corners of the room stretched toward me, twisting and pulling, like hands reaching for my ankles, my wrists. Every step I took backward felt like a battle, like I was fighting against something that was already pulling me in. I couldn't breathe. The darkness, the machine, the voice, they all collided inside my mind, and for a moment, I wasn't sure where I ended and the room began. 1,000 thoughts, 1,000 futures, all competing for my attention, until one broke through everything else. The voicemail. The voicemail that started all of this. I wasn't here by accident. I hadn't come this far on a whim. This had all been planned. I was here because of that voicemail. The one that told me to run. The one that warned me. But now, I was at the end. There was no escaping this. No running from what I had become. From what I would become. The words on the voicemail echoed in my head again. Clearer than before. "You don't have long." My heart pounded in my chest. I couldn't escape it. No matter where I went, no matter how fast I ran, the future was already written. The device was the answer to everything I had been trying to stop. It was the cause and the cure, the destruction and the rebirth. I turned, looking frantically for some exit, something to break the cycle. But all that greeted me was the glowing device in the center of the room, pulsing now with an even more intense light. It was as if the machine was drawing the very light from the room into itself, growing more powerful with each passing second. Then, just as I thought I couldn't bear it anymore, something in the air shifted. The hum of the device quieted and the whispers faded. For a brief moment, I thought I might be free, but it was only an illusion. The room had transformed. The walls now a featureless gray, the edges of the floor marked by long cracks, as if the structure was collapsing. The feeling of being trapped intensified, and I realized with horror that the door I had entered through, was gone. There was no way out. I turned back to the device, something in my gut telling me that it held the key. But I didn't know how. What was I supposed to do? What was the point of all of this? The hum grew louder again, the lights flickering in time with it. I felt it then, a sudden understanding pressing down on me. The device wasn't just a machine, it was a portal. It was something else, something far beyond what I could comprehend. And then, it happened. The vision came again just like before. But this time, it wasn't the future me staring back. It wasn't the shadow. It was a different face, one I recognized. A face I had seen only once, so long ago. My mother. She looked at me with a sorrow that twisted my heart, her eyes filled with the same emptiness I had seen in my own reflection. She spoke, but her words were muffled, as if the distance between us was too great to bridge. You were always meant to be here. The words crashed into me like a wave, and the room seemed to fold in on itself, the walls closing tighter around me. The air felt heavy, thick with some kind of unseen force, and I felt my limbs begin to grow numb. My vision blurred, the face of my mother fading into the blackness, replaced by other faces, other versions of me. This is where it ends. But before I could react, before I could scream, the world around me splintered. I fell through layers of time and space, the ground beneath me disappearing entirely, the air around me thick with a kind of disembodied pressure. The faces, the whispers, they were all gone, replaced by an endless void. A cold, suffocating dark, and then a single voice cut through it all. You will never escape. I opened my eyes, gasping for breath, only to find myself back in the center of the room, standing before the device. The light had dimmed slightly, but its pull was still strong, still insistent. It was calling to me, dragging me back into its grasp. My heart skipped a beat. I had been here before. Had I? The memories were slipping through my fingers like water. I couldn't hold on to them, couldn't place where I had seen them, where I had heard those voices. It was all blending together. The past, the future, all of it. The truth crashed into me like a hammer, and I suddenly understood. I had always been here. Everything I had done, everything I had run from, it had all led me back to this moment. This place, this machine. The voicemail wasn't a warning, it was a call to finish what had begun. And now I was the one trapped in the cycle, forever caught between the past and the future, forever stuck in the web of time. The hum of the machine pulsed louder, echoing in the silence that had swallowed the room. I stood there, motionless, caught in the unbearable knowledge that there was no escape, no way out. Everything had led to this moment. Every action, every choice, every path I had taken had been a thread in a tapestry woven long before I had even realized I was a part of it. The voicemail had never been a warning. It had been a summons, a call to this place where time itself had no meaning, where the past, present, and future collided in a chaotic swirl of fate. My body felt heavier than ever, weighed down by the truth that settled over me like a shroud. I was part of this cycle. I had always been part of it. The faces, the voices, the dark figures that had haunted me. They were pieces of the puzzle, clues that I had failed to understand until now. I looked at the device, its pulsating light growing brighter, almost blinding. I couldn't turn away. I couldn't stop the pull it had on me. It was as though I was meant to step forward, to reach out, to accept whatever it was offering, or demanding. But I knew now that it wasn't offering anything. It was simply fulfilling its purpose, just as I had been fulfilling mine. I reached for the device, my fingers trembling, my breath shallow. As I touched it, a shock of cold electricity coursed through my body, the surge of power filling every fiber of my being. My vision blurred, and for a brief moment, I saw flashes of all the lives that had come before me. Faces, places, moments, all woven together in a complex web that stretched beyond my comprehension. And then, everything went silent. The light from the device flickered and died, leaving me in complete darkness. I gasped for air, my heart racing in the stillness. But there was no sound, no whispers, no hum. Only the weight of the silence pressing in on me. I stood there, waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. The world around me seemed to have frozen, locked in place, as though time itself had ceased to move. I closed my eyes, but the darkness didn't feel like it should. It wasn't oppressive or suffocating, it was calm. Still. And then, a voice, clear and final, cut through the silence. "It's done." I opened my eyes, but the room had changed. The walls had faded, the edges of reality dissolving into an endless, empty void. There was no device, no machine, only the vast emptiness. And in that void, I knew the truth. The cycle had ended. But not for me. I wasn't free. I had always been part of this place, part of this loop, and I always would be. There was no end, no beginning, just a constant, unending loop. A story that would repeat itself over and over again forever. I couldn't escape. And so, I stood there, in the dark, waiting for the next voicemail, because I knew it was coming. I stumbled as something caught my foot, a piece of broken glass, a jagged shard, sharp enough to tear at the skin. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself not to cry out, but the pain in my ankle was sharp and sudden, throwing me off balance. I didn't have time to stop. Ignoring the pain, I forced myself to keep moving, pushing through the agony. The alley finally opened up, and I burst into the street, desperate for somewhere to hide. My eyes scanned the surroundings, but the area was eerily empty. No people, no cars, just an expanse of dark, lifeless pavement. Then I heard it. The voice, cold and calculating, cutting through the silence like a knife. "You can't run forever." I froze, the words sinking deep into my bones. It was one of them. The ones from the warehouse, the ones who didn't want me to find the answers. They were right behind me now, and I could feel their presence closing in like a vice. I forced myself to keep moving, to keep going. I couldn't afford to stop now, not when I was so close. I reached into my jacket and pulled out my phone, hoping the light would help guide me. But as soon as the screen lit up, the familiar chime echoed from it. It was a voicemail, one I hadn't received before. I didn't recognize the number. With trembling hands, I pressed play. The voice that emerged from the speaker was distorted, like a message from a distant, static-filled world. "You're running out of time. The timeline is fracturing more with each passing minute. They will catch you. They always do. But if you want to survive, if you want to fix this, you need to trust someone you don't even know yet. They'll know who you are. Find them." The message cut off abruptly, and the phone went silent. I stood there in shock, my mind racing. Trust someone I didn't know. Who was this person? And how was I supposed to find them? I didn't have time to dwell on it. The footsteps were right behind me now, and the air felt colder, heavier. The shadow stretched out, twisting unnaturally as if reaching for me. I could feel my pulse pounding in my temples, the fear threatening to choke me, but I forced myself to move forward. I didn't have a choice. I had to keep going. I turned a corner, hoping to find something, anything, that could offer me a chance to escape. The streets were still eerily empty, no lights, no cars. But in the distance, I spotted something, a faint glow coming from an alleyway. My instincts told me to go toward it. I limped toward the glow, ignoring the pain in my ankle, feeling the weight of the notebook pressing into my chest. I reached the alley, and at the far end, I saw something that made my heart leap. It was a car, a black sedan, parked under the dim light of a street lamp. And standing next to it was a figure, shrouded in darkness, their face obscured by the hood of a coat. I didn't know if I could trust them, but it was my only option. I approached cautiously, my eyes never leaving the figure. "Are you here to help?" I called out, my voice trembling. The figure didn't answer immediately. Instead, they stepped forward, lifting their head just enough to reveal their face. My breath caught in my throat. It was her, the woman from the phone, the one who had sent me the messages, the one who had warned me. She didn't look surprised to see me, but there was something new in her expression. Something that almost resembled pity. "You made it," she said softly, as if she had expected nothing less. "I knew you would." You're real," I whispered, still in disbelief. "I thought you were just a voice, a part of the message." "How?" "There's no time to explain," she interrupted, her voice hardening. "They're close. We need to leave now." Get in the car. I didn't hesitate this time. I rushed forward, slipping into the passenger seat. She slid into the driver's side, starting the car with a roar of the engine. As the car sped away, I couldn't help but look back. The shadows still seemed to stretch, like they were reaching for us, but the woman didn't flinch. She drove on with a determined focus. I glanced at her, trying to find the words. What's going on? She didn't answer right away, her gaze locked on the road ahead. It's bigger than you know, she finally said, her voice low. The future isn't just a place, it's a force, and right now, it's trying to erase us. All of us, and we're the only ones who can stop it. I swallowed hard. How? She glanced at me, her eyes briefly meeting mine. Be fixing the mistakes that led us here, by undoing what's been done. But we don't have much time. If we don't act fast, it'll be too late. The weight of her words settled over me like a heavy fog. I didn't understand everything yet, but I knew one thing for sure: I was in this, for better or worse. And there was no turning back. I just hoped I wasn't too late. The car roared through the streets, the engine's growl a stark contrast to the quiet tension that had settled in the air. My mind raced, trying to piece together everything that had happened. The voicemail, the warnings, the footsteps that had followed me through the alleyways. It was all too much. Too overwhelming to understand in the moment. But one thing was certain: I had been pulled into something much bigger than myself. I glanced over at the woman in the driver's seat. Her expression was calm, almost detached, but her eyes, those eyes, told a different story. There was something urgent in them, something raw, as if she knew more than she was letting on. Where are we going? I asked, my voice cracking slightly from the tension that had built up in my chest. Somewhere safe, she replied, her gaze never leaving the road. Well, as safe as we can be right now. I tried to focus on the road, but the city passed by in a blur of dimly lit buildings and empty streets. It felt like the world had been frozen in time, caught between moments with no clear way to escape. But then, as we took a sharp turn, I saw something that made my heart race. It was a building, tall, imposing, and completely out of place in the midst of the empty streets. It looked like an old warehouse, the kind that had been abandoned long ago, left to rot away in silence. But something about it seemed off. It was too quiet, too perfect in its isolation. That's where we're going? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Yes, she answered simply, her tone hardening. It's the only place we can hide for now. They won't find us there. Not for a while. The car slowed as we approached the building, the tires crunching against the gravel of the empty lot. My heart pounded in my chest as I looked out the window at the looming structure. There was no sign of life, no movement, just an eerie stillness that seemed to radiate from the walls. As the car came to a stop, the woman turned to me, her expression serious. Get out, she said, her voice firm. We need to move fast. We don't have much time. I didn't question her. I opened the door and stepped out into the cold night air. The chill hit me immediately, and I pulled my jacket tighter around me, feeling the weight of the situation pressed down on my shoulders. The woman was already out of the car, walking toward the building with purpose. I hurried to catch up, my footsteps echoing in the stillness. We reached the entrance, a large metal door that creaked ominously as she pushed it open. Inside, the warehouse was dark and cavernous, the air thick with dust and the scent of decay. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years. This way, the woman said, leading me into the depths of the building. The further we walked, the more I felt like we were descending into some kind of forgotten world. The space seemed endless, the walls stretching out in all directions. I could hear the sound of our footsteps bouncing off the walls, but there was nothing else. No sounds of life, no movement. We reached a small, dimly lit room at the back of the warehouse. There was a table in the center, covered in old maps, books, and strange devices that looked like they belonged to another time. The woman motioned for me to sit at the table, her eyes scanning the room as if checking for any signs of danger. "What is this place?" I asked, trying to take in everything around me. "A safe house," she replied. "A place where we can regroup, plan, and figure out what to do next. It's one of the few places that hasn't been compromised. But it won't stay that way forever." I sat down, trying to steady my breathing. The weight of the situation was starting to settle in, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in over my head. The woman seemed to sense my hesitation and sat across from me, her gaze softening for just a moment. "I know this is a lot to take in," she said quietly. "But you have to understand what's happening right now. It's not just about you. It's about all of us. The timeline is collapsing, and the only way to stop it is to fix the mistakes we've made." "What mistakes?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What mistakes are you talking about?" She paused, looking at me as if weighing her words. Then, with a deep sigh, she spoke. "There are forces at work here, forces that you wouldn't believe if I told you. The timeline isn't linear. It's been altered, fractured, and now things are starting to unravel. There's a group, people who have been manipulating the future for their own gain. They've been using technology to control events, to change outcomes. And now they've gone too far." I sat there in stunned silence, trying to process what she was saying. It sounded like something out of a science fiction novel. Yet everything that had happened to me, the voicemails, the messages, the shadows following me, felt all too real. "And how do we stop them?" I finally asked, my voice shaking. "We have to find the source," she replied. "The place where it all began. If we can get to it before they do, we might be able to reverse everything. But it won't be easy. They'll be coming for us, and they'll do whatever it takes to stop us from succeeding." I swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking in. I wasn't just running from shadows anymore. I was running from the very fabric of reality itself, and the only chance I had to survive was to trust this woman, this stranger, who seemed to know more about my life than I ever could have imagined. But I had no choice. I nodded slowly. "All right, I'll do whatever it takes." The woman's eyes softened slightly. "Good, because we're running out of time." She stood up, moving to a nearby table where a map was spread out. She pointed to a location marked with a red X. "This is where it all started," she said. "And this is where we need to go." I stared at the map, my heart pounding. I didn't know what awaited us, but I knew one thing: whatever it was going to change everything. The map in front of me felt like it was mocking me. It seemed so simple, so clear. This was the place, the key to fixing everything. But deep down, I knew better than to believe in such simplicity. Every step forward felt like stepping deeper into the unknown, and each turn seemed to bring me closer to something I couldn't quite grasp. I studied the red X that marked the spot on the map. It was located in the outskirts of the city, a forgotten corner where abandoned buildings met overgrown fields. The kind of place where people rarely ventured, a perfect hideout for secrets that no one was meant to uncover. It was too quiet, too hidden. "Are you ready?" the woman asked, breaking my trance. Her voice was steady, but I could see the anxiety behind her calm exterior. I nodded slowly, still unsure if I was ready for what lay ahead. "Yeah, let's go." She gathered a few things from the table, some old tools, a flashlight, and a small device I couldn't quite identify. Then she turned to me, giving me one last look before leading the way back toward the car. The journey to the outskirts of the city felt longer than it should have. Each passing streetlight cast an eerie glow on the road, and the city's heartbeat, its usual hum of life, seemed to fade the further we went. The silence grew oppressive, wrapping itself around us like a shroud. As we reached the outskirts, the city's lights faded completely, leaving us surrounded by darkness. The only sound was the crunch of gravel under the tires, the occasional gust of wind rattling the trees. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us. Just beyond the edge of the headlights, the woman drove with purpose, her eyes scanning the road ahead as if anticipating something. I had the distinct feeling that she wasn't just worried about getting to the location. She was worried about what would happen once we arrived. The car slowed as we approached the abandoned area. The buildings loomed ahead like silent sentinels, their windows dark and lifeless. The air seemed colder here, more sterile, as if the very place had been drained of any warmth. The woman parked the car near a rusted gate that had long since stopped serving its purpose. The gate creaked as it swung open, a sound that seemed to echo through the empty streets. "Stay close," she said as she stepped out of the car. "We don't know who or what might be watching." I followed her, my heart pounding in my chest. The path ahead was overgrown, the earth underfoot uneven and treacherous. Every step felt like it brought us closer to something ancient, something buried. We reached the building marked on the map. It was an old warehouse, like so many others in this forgotten part of the city. Its steel doors were covered in layers of rust, and its once sturdy windows were shattered and boarded up. Yet, despite its state of decay, there was an unsettling sense of vitality about it, as if it were alive, waiting for something or someone. "This is it," the woman said, her voice low. "This is where it all began." She approached the door, pulling out the small device from earlier. She pressed a button on it, and with a low mechanical hum, the door began to creak open. The sound of grinding metal scraped at my nerves, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Inside, the darkness swallowed us whole. The air smelled of mildew and old machinery, and I could hear the distant sound of dripping water echoing through the cavernous space. It was a world frozen in time, untouched by the passing years. Yet there was something about it that felt too alive, as though it had been waiting for us. "Do you feel that?" the woman asked, her voice barely a whisper. I nodded, my breath shallow. "Yeah, it's like something's here, but it's not physical." "Exactly," she said. "This is where the timeline got fractured. It started here. The technology, the experiments, they opened a rift in time. A door that shouldn't have been opened." I took a tentative step forward, my eyes scanning the shadows. "What kind of experiments?" "Not experiments?" she corrected. "They weren't trying to make something new. They were trying to control the past, the future. Everything. They created a device that could alter events, rewrite moments. But they didn't realize that with every change they made, they were unraveling everything. Now, time itself is starting to collapse." I shivered, the weight of her words sinking in. A device capable of rewriting time. The implications were staggering, and yet, it didn't feel impossible. Not after everything I'd seen. "Where is it now?" "The device?" I asked, my voice tight. She paused, glancing around the dark room. "Somewhere here. We need to find it. But be careful. There are things here, remnants of what was created. They're not alive, but they're not dead either." I felt a lump form in my throat, the fear creeping back in. Remnants. What kind of things had been left behind? And how could we possibly stop them from hunting us? "Let's find it," I said, forcing the words out despite the panic rising in my chest. We don't have much time. We moved deeper into the warehouse, the darkness seeming to close in around us with every step. The walls were covered in strange symbols, markings that seemed to pulse faintly, as if the place itself was alive, resonating with an energy I couldn't understand. Then, as we reached the far end of the room, I saw something that stopped me dead in my tracks. It was a large metal structure, similar to a vault. The door was cracked open, and a faint blue light flickered from within. The air around it seemed charged, vibrating with an energy that made my skin tingle. "That's it," the woman said, her voice filled with a mix of awe and dread. "The device," I whispered, barely able to take my eyes off it. "Yes," she said, her gaze narrowing. "And once we get to it, we have to destroy it. Otherwise, nothing will be fixed. The future will collapse in on itself." I took a step forward, my body trembling. This was it, the moment that could change everything. But as I moved closer, I felt a shift in the air. A presence that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. The shadows in the room seemed to move, twisting and stretching, as if they had a life of their own. And that's when I realized we weren't alone. The air in the warehouse thickened as the shadows shifted and swirled. For a moment, everything felt suspended in time. Too still. Too quiet. I could feel the pulse of the place, a quiet hum beneath the surface, as though the warehouse itself was alive and aware of our presence. I turned to the woman, my heart hammering in my chest. Did you see that?" Her eyes were wide, but there was no sign of surprise. Only a deep, unwavering focus. "They're here," she said, her voice low and steady. "The remnants. They're drawn to the device. We have to hurry." The urgency in her tone cut through the haze of fear in my mind. I turned back to the vault-like structure, the faint blue glow from within flickering like a heartbeat. The device. The source of all this? Of the voicemail, the time shifts, the fractured moments. I took a slow breath and moved closer, every instinct telling me to run, but every rational thought pushing me forward. I could feel the energy in the room, the static in the air that made my skin crawl. The woman was beside me now, her hand outstretched toward the vault door. "We need to deactivate it before it pulls us all into the past or future," she said. "If we don't stop it, it'll tear through the fabric of time itself." I nodded, my fingers trembling as I reached for the door, pushing it open just enough to peer inside. The blue glow intensified, revealing a strange, almost organic-looking contraption in the center of the vault. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. Part machine, part something else, as if it had been grown rather than built. It hummed, alive in its own way, and I could feel its pull on me, urging me to come closer. But something deep inside me told me that getting any closer might be a mistake. "What is it?" I asked, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to remain calm. "It's a temporal device," the woman replied. "They built it to manipulate time, change past events, rewrite history. But they didn't account for the consequences. Time isn't meant to be played with like that. The more they tampered with it, the more unstable it became." I took another step closer. The blue light flickered again, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw something move within it. Something that wasn't quite human. It was a shadow, shifting in ways that defied logic. "We need to destroy it," she said urgently, taking a step toward the device. Now, before I could react, the temperature in the room dropped. A chill swept over me, and I could feel the presence growing stronger. It wasn't just the machine that was dangerous. It was whatever had been unleashed by it. The shadows around the room twisted into shapes that were no longer just dark voids. They had form with long, spindly limbs and glowing eyes. They were moving toward us, their shapes flickering in and out of existence like mirages. I could hear them whispering, a low, unintelligible hum that vibrated in my bones. "We have to act fast," the woman said, pulling a small device from her belt and aiming it at the machine. "This is the only way to reverse what's been done." I didn't question her, knowing that time was running out. The shadows were growing more tangible, their presence more menacing with each passing second. The device in her hand emitted a low buzzing sound, and I could see the machine begin to pulse, its glow intensifying. "Get ready," she warned, her eyes locking onto mine. "The device is going to react. We have to destroy it now, or it'll destabilize the entire timeline." I didn't understand all the mechanics of what was happening, but I didn't need to. I could feel the urgency in her voice, the weight of what was at stake. We had to destroy it, no matter the cost. She pressed a button on the device, and the machine in the vault began to tremble. The shadows around us surged forward, their forms now fully materialized, reaching for us with their eerie, elongated limbs. Their eyes glowed with a sinister light, reflecting the pulse of the device as it began to wear louder. A loud crash echoed from behind us. Something large had just fallen. I whipped around, my heart leaping into my throat, but there was nothing. The warehouse was still empty, save for us and the growing menace of the shadows. "Hurry!" the woman shouted, now fully panicked. "We have to." Before she could finish her sentence, the machine let out a deafening screech, its lights blindingly bright. I stumbled back, covering my eyes as the entire room seemed to shake. The air crackled with energy, and I felt a pressure build around me, as if the very fabric of reality was warping. I looked up just in time to see the woman's hand reach for the machine, her finger about to press the final button that would deactivate it. But in that instant, something reached out from the shadows, something faster than I could see, something that had been hiding in the darkness, waiting. A shadowy hand grasped her wrist, pulling her away from the device. Her scream echoed through the warehouse as she was yanked backward, her feet leaving the ground. "No," I shouted, scrambling forward. But before I could reach her, the room exploded into a blinding light. The energy from the machine surged outward, the force of it throwing me backward against the cold metal walls. The last thing I saw before everything went white was the woman, suspended in mid-air, her body contorted as if she were being pulled in multiple directions at once. The shadows enveloped her, and then nothing. The light faded slowly, leaving me in a thick, oppressive darkness. My body was heavy, as though the very air had thickened into a substance I could barely move through. My head pounded, the echoes of the explosion still reverberating through my skull. I tried to push myself up, but my limbs felt unresponsive, sluggish. The cold concrete beneath me was unnervingly familiar, but there was something off. I couldn't quite place it, but something had changed in the way the world felt. I blinked, forcing my eyes open, and the darkness began to recede, revealing the dim outline of the warehouse. But it wasn't right. The place I had been in moments ago, the sterile, harshly lit space with the looming, dangerous machine, was gone. In its place stood something almost familiar, something I hadn't seen in years. A row of wooden shelves lined the walls, filled with boxes, old crates, and papers. It looked like an office, or some sort of storage facility from decades ago. Nothing like the cutting-edge, high-tech warehouse I had been standing in before. My heart raced. I stood up, the world around me still spinning as I surveyed the surroundings. The distant hum of fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, adding to the disorienting shift. I was no longer in the modern world I knew. The atmosphere was thick with the scent of dust and something else, something metallic. My breath caught in my throat. I backed away from the shelves, my feet heavy on the floor, until I hit something, a wall. But it wasn't the cold concrete of the previous warehouse. No, it felt different, warm to the touch. The surface was rough, like old wood. My hand slid along it, trembling, and that's when I heard it. A voice. Familiar but not. It was faint, like a whisper, but it carried weight, like it was coming from the very air itself. "Are you still there?" The words sent a jolt of cold through me. I looked around frantically, trying to pinpoint the source, but there was nothing. "You need to understand." The voice continued closer this time. "You're trapped between worlds. The machine. It didn't just affect time. It affected everything. It pulled you into the fold. It's not just the future anymore. It's not just the past. You're here and you're everywhere at once." I staggered back, panic bubbling up in my throat. "What do you mean? What is happening?" But the voice didn't answer directly. Instead, it seemed to shift, the tone of it growing colder, more urgent. "The fabric of time and space has torn," it said. "What you saw, the shadows, the creatures, you didn't just get pulled through time. You're now a part of it. You're a fragment in a broken timeline." I felt a surge of fear like I'd never known. Every instinct told me to run, but I couldn't move. I was frozen, paralyzed in this strange, distorted version of reality. "You need to find the others," the voice continued, its echo growing fainter. "There are more like you, those who have been pulled in, shattered by the rift. You're not the first, you're not the last. But if you don't fix it, if you don't stop the device, everything will collapse." My pulse raced as I tried to make sense of the voice's cryptic message. I knew what it meant, the device. It was still out there, somewhere, causing this fracture, this distortion. But how was I supposed to fix it? How was I supposed to stop something that had broken time itself? I blinked hard, my mind struggling to hold on to the details of what had just happened. My last memory of the machine, the woman, the explosion, flickered in my mind, distorted. But there was no sign of her now, no sign of the device. I turned, hoping to find something, anything, that could help me make sense of this new world. But all I saw was a hallway, stretching into the distance. The walls seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy, their surfaces flickering in and out of focus like they were part of a dream or a nightmare. My hands were shaking, but I pushed forward, each step feeling heavier than the last. The air felt thicker here, like I was wading through a dense fog, but it wasn't fog, it was time itself, the fabric of reality. The hallway stretched on, twisting unnaturally, and then, at the far end, I saw it, a figure. It was tall, shadowy. Its form was hard to distinguish, but it moved, slowly, purposefully. I froze. The voice from earlier echoed in my mind, "You're not the first. You're not the last." Was this one of the others? One of the people who had been pulled in, like me? As it came closer, I realized it wasn't just a shadow. It was a person. But there was something off about them. Their movements were jerky, like they were being controlled by something else. And as they drew nearer, I could see their face. Or at least, what used to be their face. It was pale, ghostly, with no expression. Their eyes were wide, but lifeless. Like they weren't seeing the world around them, but rather something far beyond it. I took a cautious step backward, my heart pounding. The figure didn't stop. It kept coming, moving closer and closer. I wanted to run, to escape, but my legs felt like they were made of stone. And then, before I could react, it spoke. "You shouldn't be here," it whispered, its voice hollow and distorted. "We were all brought here to fix it. But you were never meant to come." The words sent a chill down my spine. Fix it. What was it? What was I supposed to fix? I opened my mouth to speak, but the words caught in my throat. The figure took another step closer, and with it, the air seemed to grow colder, denser, and then, just as suddenly, the figure stopped. It was as if something had frozen in time, like the moment was held in place by an invisible hand. The shadows flickered around me, warping and twisting. I could feel the space around me collapsing, breaking apart. The world itself felt fragile, on the verge of crumbling. And then I heard it again. That voice. I let the words sink in, but the more I thought about them, the less sense they made. The moment I had answered that call, when I had allowed myself to listen, I had sealed my fate. The future was already here, and I had no way of controlling it, no way of stopping what was to come. "You've seen the signs," the voice said, almost gently now. "The shadows, the figures, the strange distortions, they're all part of what's unfolding, and you're not the only one. There are others, too. Others who've crossed the same line you have." "Others," I repeated, my mind racing. "What do you mean? Who are they?" "They're like you," the voice replied, its tone unchanging. "They've seen the same things. They've heard the same things. They're all caught in the same cycle, just like you. And soon, you'll all come together. You'll all understand, but by then, it'll be too late to stop it. My heart skipped a beat. What will happen when we all come together? You'll know, the voice said, its final words echoing with a sense of finality. You'll see the truth about what you've become, the truth about what's coming. Before I could ask more, the line went dead. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there, phone still pressed to my ear, heart pounding in my chest. The world felt distant, as though I was standing outside of it, watching everything unfold without the ability to interfere. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't understand how the world could be so different, yet so familiar, at the same time. But one thing was certain. The future was here, and I had no choice but to live through it. I couldn't shake the feeling that the world around me was crumbling, piece by piece. Every corner I turned, every person I passed, seemed somehow unfamiliar, as though I was living in a parallel version of my own life. Time felt warped, stretched, and the weight of it pressed down on me. I hadn't slept since the voicemail. The voice still echoing in my mind, every word twisting like a thorn. I couldn't tell anyone about it who would believe me. How could I explain that I was hearing calls from the future? That I was trapped in a cycle I didn't understand? The next morning, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, staring at my reflection. The tiredness in my eyes wasn't just physical. It ran deeper, into something far more profound. I didn't look the same. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but something about the way I looked had changed. Had it always been like this? Or was this another effect of the future catching up with me? I shook my head, trying to snap myself out of it. I needed to get a grip. I needed to do something. Anything. The longer I stood there, the more my thoughts tangled. The voice had mentioned others like me. I couldn't be the only one going through this. Somewhere, there had to be someone else who had received a voicemail from the future. Someone who could explain what was happening. My phone buzzed on the bathroom counter, dragging me back to reality. My heart skipped a beat as I glanced at the screen, half expecting it to be another call from the future. But no, it was just a text message from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at the old bookstore at 2 p.m. It's important. The message sent a chill down my spine. I didn't recognize the number, but something in my gut told me it wasn't a coincidence. The voice from the voicemail had said there were others. Was this one of them? Someone who knew the truth. I didn't have time to think. I grabbed my coat and left the house, the sense of urgency rising in me with each step. I couldn't explain why, but I felt like I had no choice. I had to go. I had to know. The old bookstore wasn't far from my apartment. It was a place I had passed countless times, but never stopped in. It had an eerie, abandoned look to it, as if it was frozen in time. When I pushed the door open, a bell above it jingled. The sound sharp in the quiet. The store was dimly lit, the air thick with dust and the musty scent of old paper. Rows of bookshelves stretched endlessly, their contents hidden beneath layers of time. But something wasn't right. The silence felt heavier here, like the store itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. I stepped deeper into the store, my footsteps muffled by the thick carpet beneath me. The aisles seemed to stretch on forever, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I turned a corner and stopped dead in my tracks. A figure was standing in the shadows, just out of sight. I couldn't make out their face, but there was something about their posture that felt familiar. They were waiting for me. I took a hesitant step forward, and the figure finally spoke, their voice low and urgent. "You're here," they said. "Good, you have to listen to me." I didn't recognize them, but something about their voice sent a jolt of recognition through me. This wasn't just any random person. This was someone who knew something, someone who had answers. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice betraying the fear that I couldn't hide. "How do you know about the voicemail?" "I've been expecting you," the figure replied, stepping forward into the dim light. I could see now that they were a woman, her face obscured by a scarf and large sunglasses. She didn't seem to care that she looked like she was hiding. She was hiding something, I could tell. "You've crossed over," she continued. "I saw it when you received the voicemail. You're not the first one, and you won't be the last." My mind raced. "What do you mean? What's happening to me?" "It's happening to all of us," she said, her voice barely a whisper, as though she feared being heard. "You've been caught in the loop. The cycle that repeats itself. The future and the past intertwine. And it's not just you who's trapped. There are others, people who've received the same calls, people who've crossed the same line." I felt my chest tighten. "Why me? Why am I getting these calls?" "Because you were meant to," she said. "It's part of the plan. The future is already set. It's not about what happens. It's about how you respond to it. And every time someone answers the call, the cycle gets closer to completion. We're all part of it now." Her words made my head spin. The future wasn't some distant event. It was happening now, and I was somehow tied to it, bound to a fate I couldn't understand. "But how do I stop it?" I asked desperately. "Is there any way to break the cycle?" The woman's face softened, a hint of sadness creeping into her eyes. "You can't stop it. You never could. The cycle has already begun, and there's no way out. All you can do now is wait. The answers will come, but so will the consequences." My stomach churned at her words. Wait, consequences. The future had already set its course, and there was nothing I could do to change it. I was trapped. "There's one more thing," she added, her voice growing serious. The phone call wasn't the end of it. It was just the beginning. There's something worse coming. You have to be ready for it. Before I could ask her what she meant, the lights in the store flickered. The air felt charged, like a storm was about to break. And in that moment, I knew that whatever came next was going to be even worse than I could imagine. The storm outside seemed to reflect the turmoil inside my mind. The old bookstore, once filled with the smell of musty pages and the soft creak of wooden shelves, now felt like a prison. The woman, whoever she was, had just dropped a bombshell, and I was struggling to process everything. There was no going back. I could feel the weight of the words she had spoken, the implications settling in like cold, heavy stones in my stomach. The cycle, the loop, the future, it was all connected, and I, for reasons beyond my understanding, was a part of it. The flickering lights above buzzed again, and my pulse quickened. The air felt thicker now, charged with something I couldn't put into words. I glanced around the room, but there was nothing to see except the towering bookshelves, the forgotten stories they held, and the dim shadows that filled every corner. "What's coming?" I asked, my voice betraying a mixture of fear and disbelief. "You said something worse is coming." "What do you mean?" The woman, whose face was still obscured by the sunglasses and scarf, stepped closer to me. Her movements were deliberate, careful, as though she was about to reveal something that would change everything. She reached into the pocket of her coat and pulled out a small, cracked phone. "This," she said, holding it out for me to see, "is the key to understanding everything. The phone's been passed down from person to person, and every person who's received it has gone through what you're going through now. But there's more. The calls don't stop. They evolve. And what you're hearing, it's not just the future. It's a warning." I stared at the phone in her hand, its screen cracked, its case battered from what looked like years of use. My heart skipped a beat as I realized something. The phone looked almost identical to mine. Was this the same phone that had sent me the voicemail? Was this a version of the same device, from the future. A warning of what? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, the question heavy on my lips. The end, she replied, her voice lowering. The end of everything. This cycle isn't just about you, it's about the collapse of time itself. People who receive the calls will start to unravel. Memories will fade, days will blur, and before long, everything will be lost. The future will consume the past, and we'll be left with nothing but a void. Her words seemed to hang in the air, pressing down on me with the weight of 1,000 fears. I couldn't breathe. The thought that everything I knew, the life I had, the people I loved, could vanish was too much to comprehend. But there was no denying the truth in her voice. She had been through this. She knew what was happening. But there's something you can do, she continued, her tone shifting. Not much, but something. I leaned forward, desperate for any shred of hope, any way to stop this nightmare from unfolding. What is it? How can I stop it? She glanced over her shoulder, as though checking for something or someone. Before stepping closer, her voice dropped to a near whisper. You need to find the others, the people who've received the calls before you. They'll have the answers, but they won't be easy to find. Some of them have lost their way, others have already disappeared. The key to stopping the end is understanding what happened to them, how they broke the cycle, or failed to. I shook my head in confusion. The others, how do I find them? How do I even know where to start? The woman took a deep breath and held out the battered phone. This is your only clue. It holds the names of the others, the ones who've been caught in the loop before you. But you won't be able to reach them all. Some of them have already fallen off the map. Others are in hiding. And some are not the same as they once were. I stared at the phone, my hands trembling as I took it from her. The screen flickered to life, the dim glow illuminating her face for just a moment. For a split second, I thought I saw something in her eyes. Something dark, something haunting. But then she turned away, her back to me once more. You're not the only one, she said softly. But you will be the last. You have to be careful. Trust no one. And most importantly, don't trust the calls. They will mislead you. I nodded numbly, the weight of her words settling like a stone in my chest. I couldn't stay here any longer. I had to leave. I had to find the others. But I also had to understand what had happened to me, what had happened to everyone before me. With a final glance at the woman, who was now retreating further into the shadows, I turned and walked out of the bookstore. The cold air hit me as soon as I stepped outside, the wind biting at my skin. I pulled my coat tighter around me and glanced down at the phone in my hand. The screen was dark again. No messages, no calls. Just an empty, cracked screen. But I knew it wasn't over. The future was calling, and the voicemail had only been the beginning. The wind howled through the empty streets, carrying with it the smell of rain and the heavy weight of impending doom. My footsteps echoed against the cold pavement as I walked, the phone from the woman clutched tightly in my hand. I still couldn't believe what she had said, how everything was connected, how the future and past were converging in a way I couldn't fully comprehend. But one thing was clear, I had to find the others. I passed darkened storefronts and closed cafes, the quiet of the night pressing in on me like a suffocating blanket. Every now and then, I would glance down at the phone, hoping for some clue, some sign that I was on the right path. But the screen remained black, as empty as my thoughts. Where was I supposed to start? The woman's words echoed in my mind. The others. Some have already disappeared. Others are hiding. Some are not the same as they once were. What did that mean? And who was I supposed to trust? I reached the edge of the city, where the streetlights grew fewer, and the shadows stretched longer. The world seemed quieter here, more still, more distant. My mind raced with questions, but the answers eluded me. Suddenly, the phone buzzed in my hand. its screen lighting up for the first time since I had left the bookstore. I stopped in my tracks, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at the phone. There was a message. "You're not alone. Find us before it's too late." The words were simple, yet they sent a shiver down my spine. Who was this? Was it one of the others the woman had mentioned? And why did they say it was too late? Too late for what? I looked around, half expecting someone to be watching me from the shadows, but there was nothing. Just the eerie silence of the night. I felt the need to act. Time was running out, and I had no idea how much time I had left. I looked at the message again, hoping for something more. A clue, an address, a name, but there was nothing else. I tucked the phone into my coat pocket and began walking again, faster this time. The city felt different now, as if it were holding its breath. The streets I had once known so well were now unfamiliar, twisted into strange, labyrinthine paths. My mind began to race. What did the message mean, and who could I trust? The woman had warned me not to trust anyone, and yet here I was, holding on to the very device that was pulling me deeper into whatever madness was unfolding. The sky above was clouded over, the storm rolling in from the distance. I could hear the distant rumble of thunder, and the wind had picked up, pushing me forward, as if urging me to keep moving. I needed answers, and I needed them now. A few blocks ahead, I spotted a dimly lit alleyway, tucked between two buildings. The entrance was narrow, but it seemed to beckon me, pulling me in like a magnet. I hesitated for a moment, my instincts screaming at me to turn around and leave, but something in my gut told me this was where I needed to go. I stepped into the alley, the walls of the buildings closing in around me. It was colder here, the air thick with dampness and the faint smell of decay. The light from the street lamps barely reached this far, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and sway with every gust of wind. At the end of the alley, there was a door. It was old, weathered, and barely visible in the darkness. But as I drew closer, I could make out faint markings on the wood, as though someone had scratched something into it. Symbols, letters, something that made no sense. I reached for the door, my heart racing in my chest, and before I could turn the handle, a voice from behind me made me freeze. "You shouldn't have come here." I spun around, my pulse quickening. There, standing in the shadows, was a man, tall, with an air of danger that I couldn't ignore. His face was hidden in the darkness, but his presence was unmistakable. "You're not ready," he continued, his voice low, almost a growl. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. You never will until it's too late." I took a step back, the door now forgotten. "Who are you?" He didn't answer. Instead, he took a step forward, the shadows seeming to stretch around him like a cloak. "You're looking for answers? But some answers are better left unknown." I didn't know what to say. Everything in me told me to run, to get as far away from this man as possible. But the curiosity, the need for answers, kept me rooted to the spot. "The others," I whispered, almost to myself. "The ones who've received the calls. Where are they?" The man's lips twisted into a dark smile, but there was no warmth in it. Only cold, calculated amusement. "They've been lost for a long time, and if you're smart, you'll stop looking for them. There's nothing left to find." I shook my head. "No. I have to know. I need to stop this, whatever it is." The man's expression hardened, and for the briefest moment, I saw something in his eyes. Something that made me think he wasn't just warning me. He was trying to stop me. "Then you're already too far gone," he said, his voice almost a hiss. "The future doesn't let you escape once it has you in its grip." Before I could respond, he stepped back into the shadows, disappearing as quickly as he had appeared. I was left standing there, my breath shallow and my mind racing. I turned back to the door, my hand gripping the handle with determination. The The storm outside intensified, the winds howling louder now, but I couldn't turn back. Not now. With a deep breath, I pushed the door open, stepping into the unknown. The door creaked as it swung open, and I stepped inside, the dark interior swallowing me whole. My eyes adjusted slowly, the dim light barely illuminating what looked like an abandoned warehouse. Dust hung in the air, clinging to everything, and the faint smell of mildew mixed with something else, something metallic, almost sharp. The silence was oppressive, too quiet, as if even the walls themselves were afraid to make a sound. I hesitated at the threshold, the weight of the decision settling on my shoulders. Was this really the right place? The man in the alley had warned me against it, but something inside me urged me forward, a compulsion I couldn't shake. I stepped further inside, the floorboards creaking under my weight. I could hear my own breath, the sound of my heartbeat in my ears, louder than the world around me. I felt exposed, vulnerable. The shadows seemed to move around me, curling and twisting in unnatural ways, and I couldn't help but wonder if I was being watched. At the far end of the warehouse, I saw movement. Just a flicker, like a shadow darting past. My breath caught in my throat as I stood frozen, every muscle in my body tense. Then, from the darkness, a voice echoed. It was soft, barely a whisper, but it was unmistakable. "You came." I spun toward the sound, my heart racing in my chest. There, standing in the shadows, was a figure. At first, I thought it might be the man from the alley, but as my eyes adjusted, I saw that this was someone else. Someone familiar. The person stepped into the light and I gasped. It was her, the woman from the phone call, the one whose voice had warned me, whose cryptic messages had led me here. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear, and yet there was a strange calmness to her presence. She didn't seem surprised to see me, as if she had been waiting for this moment all along. "I told you," she said, her voice barely audible above the hum of the old warehouse. "I told you this was the only way." I took a step forward, my mind racing. What is this? Why am I here? What's happening? My voice was shaky, uncertainty flooding my every word. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked past me, her footsteps almost silent against the wooden floor. She seemed lost in thought, as if grappling with something beyond my understanding. Finally, she turned to face me, her eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that sent a chill down my spine. "It's happening," she whispered. "It's been happening for a while now. The future, it's bleeding into the past, and we're caught in the middle. We always have been." I shook my head. "What are you talking about?" "Everything," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. "The voicemails, the people disappearing, it's all connected. This place, this time. It's where everything converges, where the past and future collide." I stared at her, trying to make sense of her words, but they only left me more confused. "But I don't understand. The phone, the messages, the warnings. Who else is involved?" She looked at me, her eyes filled with a deep sadness. "We all are," she said softly. "We're all part of the same loop, caught in the same cycle. The future has already happened, and now it's trying to rewrite the past." My mind reeled as her words settled in. The future, trying to rewrite the past. Was this some kind of nightmare? What happens if we don't stop it? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Everything ends," she replied, her gaze drifting toward the far wall, where something shifted in the shadows. "The timeline will collapse. Reality will crumble, and nothing will be left." My stomach churned. I didn't know what to believe anymore. How could any of this be real? But how do we stop it? I pressed. "What do I need to do?" She took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small, worn-out notebook. She held it out to me, her fingers brushing against mine as I took it. The pages were filled with scribbled notes, diagrams, and strange symbols I couldn't make sense of. It looked like the ramblings of someone desperate, Someone who had been trying to understand all of this for a long time. "This is the key," she said. "It's all in here. The answers, the way to fix everything. But you have to act fast. We don't have much time." I opened the notebook, flipping through the pages. But as I scanned the words, they seemed to blur and shift before my eyes, as if the very text was unstable, like it was being erased and rewritten in real time. "What's happening?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Why is it changing?" Her expression darkened, and for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. "It's them," she whispered. "They're trying to stop us. Whoever's behind this, they're trying to prevent us from finding the truth. They don't want anyone to fix the timeline." Before I could respond, there was a loud bang from the far side of the warehouse, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps approaching. The woman's eyes widened in panic. "They're here," she said urgently, pushing me toward a nearby staircase. "Go, you have to leave now. Take the notebook and find the others. They can help. I can't protect you anymore." I didn't hesitate. I ran. The staircase creaked under my feet as I ascended, my heart pounding in my chest. Behind me, I could hear voices, low, menacing murmurs that made my skin crawl. The air grew colder, and the sense of dread intensified with each step I took. At the top of the stairs, I reached a door, another exit. I didn't stop to look back. I threw it open and stumbled into the night, the cold air biting at my skin. I glanced down at the notebook in my hands, but the pages were already fading before my eyes, as though the very act of escaping was tearing the answers apart. I had to find the others. I had to fix everything. And I had no idea how much time I had left. I ran as fast as I could through the darkened streets, the notebook clutched tightly in my hand. The wind cut through the night like a blade, and my breath came in ragged gasps. I had no clear destination, no plan, just an overwhelming urge to get away from that warehouse. It felt like the air itself was alive, pressing in on me, suffocating me. Every shadow seemed to be alive, watching me, following my every step. The sound of footsteps echoed behind me, distant but growing louder. My heart skipped a beat. They were following me. I didn't dare look back. I rounded a corner and dashed down an alley, hoping to lose them, to find some cover, but the alley stretched on endlessly. I could still hear those footsteps, closer now, as if they were gaining ground with every stride I took. I kept my eyes on the end of the alley, praying I would see the street open up into a more populated area, some place where I could blend in. But the darkness was thick here, the kind of oppressive blackness that made every corner feel like a dead end. The sound of footsteps behind me grew louder still. "Welcome to the other side," it said, its voice smooth and almost inviting, but there was something wrong with it. Something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I tried to step back, but my feet wouldn't move. It was as if the darkness had taken root in the very ground beneath me, anchoring me in place. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, but it was muffled as if I were underwater. The world felt distorted, like I was slipping in and out of focus. "What's happening?" I managed to croak, the words a struggle. "You've crossed over?" The creature replied, its eyes narrowing with something that might have been amusement. "You've already been a part of this for far longer than you realize." The figures behind it continued to spill through the rift, their forms flickering like bad reception on an old television. Some of them had faces, some didn't. Some were barely more than shadows, barely human, but all of them had that same unblinking stare. Their gaze locked on me, and I felt as though they could see every thought, every secret I had ever kept hidden. "No, this can't be real," I whispered, shaking my head. "This isn't happening." But as the words left my mouth, I realized just how hollow they sounded. Reality had already slipped away. The world I had known was gone, and I was standing at the edge of something much darker. The creature smiled, slow and cruel. Of course, it's real. This is the future after all. I wanted to scream, to break free, to wake up from whatever nightmare I was trapped in, but it was too late. The rift behind them was widening, and the figures were stepping closer, their presence overwhelming. Each movement they made seemed to distort the air around them, bending reality like a funhouse mirror. They were closing in on me. You were always meant to be part of this, the creature continued. You can't escape fate. It was never about choice. It was always going to happen, and now you're here. And you'll see it through to the end. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. My body was frozen, my mind spiraling into panic. Every instinct told me to run, to fight, but I couldn't. The dark figures surrounded me, their eyes unblinking, their gaze colder than ice. One of them, an older figure, its face completely obscured by shadows, stepped forward. It raised a hand, and a strange energy crackled in the air around it, like static before a storm. The air thickened with an oppressive weight, and suddenly, I could hear it, the voices. They weren't just whispering anymore. They were shouting, yelling at me, bombarding me from all sides. Help us. You have to stop it. You can't trust them. We're all trapped. The voices were chaotic, desperate, as if the very fabric of time itself was unraveling around me. But just as quickly as they had risen, they fell silent. The air grew still again. The figure with the obscured face lowered its hand. You'll understand soon enough. Suddenly, I felt it. A sharp pull, like a gravitational force, was dragging me toward the rift. It wasn't just physical, it was mental too. My thoughts were being ripped from me, my memories unraveling, every fragment of my life slipping away. I could feel the tug of the future, pulling me towards something I couldn't comprehend, something too big for me to fight. This is where you belong, the creature. James, or whatever it had become, whispered. This is the price for knowing too much. I wanted to resist. I wanted to fight it. But as I was drawn toward the rift, something shifted. The world around me flickered again, and for a brief moment, I saw something through the tear in the fabric of reality, something I wasn't supposed to see. A version of myself, older, haggard, standing in front of the same machine, the same voicemail, the same dark figures, the same future. And then, just as quickly, it was gone. I had no time to process what I had seen, no time to understand what it meant. The rift pulled me in, and the world went dark once more. The feeling of being pulled through the rift was unlike anything I could describe. It wasn't like falling, or like being dragged through water. It felt more like being split open from the inside, as though my body was being stretched and compressed at the same time. Time and space lost all meaning. I was everywhere and nowhere, all at once. I could see flashes of memories, of places I hadn't been, of people I'd never met. The voices from before returned, more urgent now. Don't let it take you. You have to stop it. The future is a prison. The rift felt like it had no end. Every moment stretched into eternity, each second longer than the last. My mind couldn't grasp what was happening. Every part of me screamed to wake up, to break free, but my body was weightless, suspended in this unknown space. Then, just as I thought I couldn't take it anymore, the pull stopped. The rift ceased to tug at me, and I was suddenly thrust back into solid ground. I gasped for air, the sudden transition from nothingness to reality almost too much to bear. My knees buckled, and I collapsed onto the cold, rough surface beneath me. The world around me was blurry at first, like I was seeing it through a fogged window. My heart raced, my chest heaving as I tried to steady my breathing. It took a moment for my vision to clear, and when it did, I realized I was no longer in the same place. I was somewhere else. The landscape stretched out before me, dark, desolate, and eerily silent. There were no stars in the sky, just an endless void that seemed to suck in the light. The ground beneath my hands felt strange, too, hard, but not like stone. It was almost as if it were a living thing, pulsing gently beneath me. As I pushed myself up, I realized I wasn't alone. There were others here, figures standing in the distance, their shapes barely discernible against the void, like backdrop. I tried to call out, but my voice didn't carry. It felt muffled, like I was speaking underwater. I stumbled to my feet, the air heavy with something I couldn't quite place, an unsettling energy that made my skin crawl. "Where am I?" I whispered to myself, but no answer came. Instead, one of the figures in the distance began to move toward me, its gait slow and deliberate. The closer it got, the clearer its form became. It was humanoid, but something about it felt off. Its body was tall, almost unnaturally so, and its face was shrouded in darkness, only the faintest outline of its features visible. As it drew nearer, I could feel my heart pounding harder in my chest. I didn't know who, or what, this was, but I instinctively knew that it wasn't here to help. When it was only a few feet away, it stopped, its glowing eyes locking onto mine. For a moment, neither of us moved. The air seemed to thicken, the silence oppressive. Then, it spoke, its voice deep and resonant, vibrating through my very bones. "You shouldn't have come here." I took a step back, my legs shaky. "What is this place? Where am I?" My voice was barely above a whisper, but I didn't care. I needed answers. "This is where time breaks," it said, its voice cold and devoid of any warmth. "Where everything converges, the past, the present, and the future. This is where fate is sealed, where choices are meaningless." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "No," I stammered, my thoughts racing. "This isn't real. This can't be real. You were just where you needed to be." The figure interrupted, its gaze unwavering. "You crossed the line. You heard the message, and now you've entered the web. Time no longer obeys you here. You're a part of it now. A part of everything." My mind was spinning. "I don't understand. What do you want from me?" "What I want is irrelevant," the figure replied. "You don't have a choice anymore. You're bound to this place, just like the others." I turned away, desperate to find any way out of this nightmare. The others, the figures in the distance, were moving closer now, more of them materializing out of the darkness. They were all the same, their faces hidden, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Some were barely more than shadows, others were more solid, but they all had the same eerie presence. One by one, they gathered around me, circling like wolves preparing to close in on their prey. I was trapped. "You can't escape," the figure said, its voice just a faint echo now, as if it were fading into the background. "You never could." I turned back to face the figure, panic creeping up my spine. "What do you mean? What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen?" It almost sounded amused. "You've already seen it. You just didn't understand." The other figures seemed to close in around me now, their glowing eyes all turned toward me. My heart was pounding, my breath coming in short gasps. I was running out of time. But for what? I didn't know. All I knew was that I had to stop this, whatever this was. Then, a sudden realization hit me, something that made my blood run cold. The voicemail, the future, the dark figures, they were all connected, and I had already played my part. "You knew this was coming," the figure whispered, its voice almost a caress, but in it, I could hear something worse than any threat. It was acceptance. "You've already made your choice." In that moment, everything came rushing back. The warning signs, the voices in the voicemail, the strange pull of the future. It wasn't a warning anymore. It was an inevitability. I had already lost. The figures closed in around me, their movements slow and deliberate, as though they were savoring the moment. My mind was racing, trying to piece together the impossible reality I had stumbled into. The eerie silence pressed in from all sides, suffocating me as I stood frozen, unable to make sense of the situation. You're not alone, the figure whispered again, its voice resonating within me, chilling me to my core. The others are coming for you too. I tried to back away, my heart pounding so loud, I thought it might burst from my chest. The ground beneath me felt slick, almost gelatinous, as though it were alive, shifting with every movement I made. I stumbled, my legs unable to keep up with the panic that surged through me. My vision blurred again, as the air thickened with an unexplainable energy. As I turned, desperate to escape the encroaching figures, I saw them. Others, moving through the darkness, just beyond the reach of my sight. They weren't human, not entirely. Their forms were twisted, like distorted shadows of what they once were. Some of them seemed to flicker in and out of existence, their bodies warping as though they were trapped between worlds. I couldn't understand. How was this happening? Where was I? This place. It wasn't real, but it felt all too real. The pull of the future, the voicemail, had dragged me into this nightmare, and now there was no way back. Stop running, the first figure said, its voice colder than before. You can't escape what you've already seen. You've already made your choice, and now the consequences will unfold. My voice cracked, desperation clawing at me. I didn't mean to do this.
I don't know what's happening.
What do you want from me? You're part of it now, the figure said, its tone almost affectionate, like a teacher explaining a difficult lesson. You are caught in the web. Time and fate. They no longer belong to you. The words didn't make sense, but the weight of them pressed down on me. My mind swirled in confusion as I turned to face the other figures. They were everywhere now, surrounding me on all sides. Their eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and as they moved closer, their presence seemed to distort the air itself, bending it like heat waves rising from a fire. Then I saw it. A faint shimmer in the distance, a flicker of light against the oppressive darkness. It was the faintest hint of something familiar, something that stood in stark contrast to the nightmare that surrounded me. It was a doorway. Without thinking, I moved toward it, my feet stumbling beneath me as I tried to run, tried to escape the inevitable. My heart pounded faster, each beat a drum in my chest, urging me to push forward, to reach the light, to get out before it was too late. But the figures weren't far behind. They moved faster now, their long limbs stretching unnaturally as they gained on me. The air felt thick, suffocating, and I could barely breathe as the doorway drew closer. You can't run. The voice of the first figure echoed in my mind. You've already crossed the threshold. There's nowhere to go. This is your fate now. I was almost there, my hand reaching for the shimmering light. For a moment, I thought I might make it, but then the air grew cold, freezing my movements, locking my legs in place. I couldn't move. I couldn't escape. I turned, desperate, only to see them closing in, their eyes glowing brighter with each step they took. The first figure stood at the forefront, its face still obscured by darkness, but I could feel its presence, its power, bearing down on me. It's already too late, it said, the words cutting through the silence. The future is already in motion. You can't change it. I tried to speak, to argue, but no words came. I wanted to scream, to beg for help, but nothing would escape my throat. I was paralyzed, trapped in the nightmare I had unwillingly stepped into. And then, in the distance, I saw something. A flicker of movement. A person. Someone walking through the dark, their figure more solid than the rest. They moved slowly. Deliberately, like they were walking toward me. But this was no figure made of shadows. It was me. What is this? I whispered, my voice trembling as I stared at the person coming toward me. Who are you? The figure didn't answer. It simply moved closer, its face growing clearer as it approached. It was a perfect mirror of me, down to the smallest detail. The same eyes, the same posture, the same expression of confusion and fear. You should have listened, the mirrored figure said softly, its voice eerily familiar. You shouldn't have ignored the signs. You shouldn't have picked up the phone. The words echoed in my mind like a warning I had long since ignored. The mirrored version of me reached out, touching my arm, and the world around me shifted once again. I felt my body jerk forward, as though being yanked from one place to another. The darkness around me began to fade, replaced by a brilliant white light. And then I was back. The world was the same, yet different. I was standing in the same room, the same street, but everything felt off, as if I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. The future had caught up with me, and now it was here. I stared at my surroundings, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The figures, the voices, the mirror image, they were all part of something much bigger than I could understand. I had seen the future. I had listened to the voicemail. And now I had no choice but to face what came next. But what did that even mean? What had I just become a part of? The sound of my breath was too loud in the quiet room. It was as though my body was hyper-aware of everything. Each heartbeat, every breath, every slight shift of air. My mind spun in chaotic circles as I stood in the middle of the street, everything around me looking the same but feeling different. The figures, the shadows, the distorted whispers, they were gone, replaced by an oppressive silence. Yet, the feeling of dread still clung to me like a second skin. I wanted to look around, to check if anyone else had seen what I had, but I couldn't bring myself to move. I felt watched. The eerie calmness that had settled over me was broken by the sudden ringing of my phone. It was the same number as before. The same damn number that had brought me here. I stared at the screen, frozen, as the seconds ticked by. I could almost hear the voice on the other end of the line, feel the cold, metallic tone of the words, yet to come. Would it be the same voice as before? The voice of the figure from the shadows, telling me that I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. A sharp breath escaped my lips, and I reached for the phone before I could talk myself out of it. My hand shook as I brought it to my ear. The moment the call connected, I heard it. "You thought you could escape, didn't you?" the voice said. It was cold, chilling to the bone, but not the same voice as before. This one was familiar, but in a way that made me question my sanity. "You can't escape what's already been set into motion. You never could." I opened my mouth to respond, but the words stuck in my throat as though something was keeping me from speaking. The voice continued unfazed. "The future doesn't change. Not for you. Not for anyone. It's already decided, and all you did was seal your fate when you answered that voicemail." I swallowed hard, trying to focus, to make sense of what was happening. "Who is this?" I managed to croak, my voice sounding foreign to me. "What do you want from me?" The voice on the other end of the line let out a soft chuckle, but there was nothing humorous about it. "I don't want anything from you. You're already in it, whether you understand it or not. You were never supposed to know about this. About us." "Yes," I repeated, my heart pounding harder. My thoughts spun faster than I could follow. "What do you mean?" "The future is already here," the voice continued, its words slow and deliberate, like a warning. "What you've seen, what you've heard, it's only the beginning. There's no going back." I shook my head, trying to push the panic down. I needed answers. I needed to understand what was happening, why everything felt so wrong. I could hear the faint static of the call, almost as if the connection itself was being tampered with. "It's too late for you," the voice said, cutting through my thoughts. "The future is not a linear thing. It's fluid, like water. You think you can change it, but it's already been shaped. Every action, every decision. They all have their place in what's to come. You're a part of it now. There's no going back, no escaping what you've set in motion." The words hit me like a ton of bricks, and I felt my stomach drop. My body went cold, the air around me growing thicker, heavier. My mind scrambled for an explanation, but nothing made sense. It was as if the world itself was turning on its axis, pulling me deeper into something I couldn't escape. What happens now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The silence on the other end of the line stretched on for what felt like an eternity, and just when I thought the call might end, the voice spoke again. You're going to see it. You're going to witness everything. I froze, my blood running cold. What do you mean? The others are already here. It said, almost casually, like the words didn't even matter. The ones who've been waiting, watching. The ones who will make sure you never forget. I took a step back, my legs shaking as my mind raced to keep up with what I was hearing. My eyes darted around, searching for something, anything, to explain what was going on. But the street was empty. The world was still, but the silence, the suffocating silence, seemed to grow deeper with each passing second. The voice continued. The truth isn't what you think it is. Time is a construct, a cage. You're trapped inside it, and the only way out is to face the consequences of what you've done. What have I done? I whispered, barely able to keep the panic from taking over. What do you want me to do? There's nothing you can do, the voice replied, cold and indifferent. You've already seen too much. You've already crossed the line. Now you're just waiting for the rest of it to unfold. The future has no mercy. It has no end. I felt a tremor in my hands as the line went silent, the call disconnected, leaving me in the suffocating quiet once more. I stood there, stunned, as the gravity of what had just been said sank in. The future. The truth, it didn't make sense. None of it made sense. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I had no choice. I was already part of whatever this was. I was already a part of something that I couldn't understand. Something that I had no control over. The figures, the shadows, the voices had been real. They were warning me. But I hadn't been able to stop myself. I had listened to the voicemail. And now I had no idea what would come next. But I had a feeling. Whatever it was, I wasn't going to like it. The phone slipped from my hand, falling to the pavement with a sharp crack. I didn't even flinch at the sound. My thoughts were consumed by the voice on the other end, the unsettling promise of things yet to come. The future was not a place I could escape. I had no control over it, and no matter how much I tried to reason, the truth was inescapable. I stared at the phone, now lying motionless on the ground, as if it too had accepted the inevitable. The words still echoed in my head, "You've already crossed the line. There's no going back." The weight of them pressed on me like a physical force, suffocating me, making it hard to breathe. I crouched down and picked up the phone, my hands still shaking. The screen was cracked. The call history showing only the number that had started this entire nightmare. I didn't want to look at it again. I didn't want to hear that voice again. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had no choice. Whatever this was, it was already inside of me. And I needed answers, even if they led me deeper into the unknown. With a reluctant breath, I pressed the call history, my thumb hovering over the number. I hesitated for a moment. Was I ready to face whatever came next? I could feel the tug of something, fear, curiosity, dread, urging me forward. My thumb hit the call button. The phone rang once, twice, and then the voice came back, cool and detached. Just like before. "I see you've made the choice," it said, as though it knew exactly what I was going to do before I even did it. "You've decided to follow the path laid out for you. There's no turning back now." I clenched my jaw, my stomach twisting with unease. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The words felt hollow, like I was speaking to someone who wasn't even there. "I don't want anything from you," the voice replied, its tone eerie in its calmness. "You've already given me what I needed. Now it's your turn to see what comes next, what happens when time is no longer what you think it is." I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping me. What does that even mean? Time isn't what it seems. Exactly, the voice said, almost pleased. Time is not linear. It's a loop, a cycle. And you, my friend, are caught in it. The future is set, but you've already seen too much. You're a part of it now, and there's no escaping your place in this cycle. I could feel my chest tightening, panic beginning to rise. What are you talking about? I don't even understand. What's happening to me? You will, the voice answered cryptically. Sooner or later, you'll understand. You'll see what I see. But first, you'll need to face the consequences. There's always a price for knowing too much about what lies ahead. I wanted to scream, wanted to demand answers, but something about the calmness in its voice kept me frozen in place. The air felt thick, suffocating, like the world around me was closing in. I looked around, but the street was still empty, just like it had been before. Nothing had changed, but everything felt wrong. You're already seeing it. The voice continued, its tone softer now. The silence, the stillness. The world around you is waiting for you to understand, but don't worry. It's all part of the plan. What plan? I asked, the frustration in my voice now clear. What are you talking about? The voice chuckled darkly. The plan that's been set into motion the moment you heard that voicemail. You've been a part of this since the beginning. You just didn't know it. I blinked rapidly, trying to clear the fog in my mind. The world around me felt distorted, as though I were trapped between two realities. One where everything made sense, and another where everything was spinning out of control. The air was thick with tension, heavy with unspoken words. I could still feel the presence of something, lurking just beyond the edges of my perception. James stood in front of me, his face pale and etched with fear. He looked as though he had seen a ghost, perhaps even more than one. But the question I couldn't shake was whether he could see it too, whatever it was that I had just encountered. James? I said, my voice hoarse. Are you okay? His eyes flickered as though he hadn't expected me to speak. Then, slowly, he nodded, though the unease in his expression remained. He was looking at me as if he were trying to place me, trying to figure out if I was still the same person. But I could feel it too. The difference, the fracture in everything. Something had changed, and it wasn't just the moment. It was something deeper. A shift in the very fabric of reality. I don't know what just happened, he said, his words stumbling out in a mix of confusion and fear. I felt like I was somewhere else, but I was still here. Like I wasn't even myself anymore. I couldn't move. It was like I was frozen in time. Frozen in time. That was exactly what I had felt too. The sensation of being trapped, of being suspended in a moment that shouldn't exist, that couldn't exist. A space where the rules of reality were rewritten by forces beyond our control. It was a sensation I couldn't escape. But I had to. I had to get us out of this. James, I said again, this time more forcefully, trying to shake off the numbness that had settled into my body. We need to focus. We have to fix this before it gets worse. He nodded, but his eyes still carried that look of uncertainty. Fix it? What do you mean? What exactly is this? I wasn't entirely sure myself. All I knew was that we were playing with something far bigger than us. Something that didn't want to be played with. But there was no going back now. I had made my choice, and now it was dragging me deeper into a mess I couldn't unravel. I felt the weight of the machine we had used, the device that had allowed us to communicate with the future, heavy on my mind. It had opened a door, one that had been sealed shut for a reason. We have to go back, I said, my voice steadying as I spoke, though inside, panic clawed at me. We need to find the source. The machine, it's still out there. It's the only way to fix this. James's face went slack with disbelief. The machine, he repeated. It's still here? I thought we destroyed it. I thought we destroyed everything. His words hit me like a punch. Destroyed it. I had no memory of destroying it. No memory of anything but the cold, unsettling sensation of time warping, folding in on itself. I had no idea if what he was saying was true, or if this was yet another trick played by whatever force had come through that voicemail from the future. We never destroyed it? I said slowly, the realization hitting me with a sickening certainty. We couldn't have. If we did, everything would be different. The timeline, everything would be reset. But we were still here, trapped in the aftermath of a choice we didn't fully understand. I don't know what's happening, James whispered, his voice shaking now. But we need to find it. Whatever it is, wherever it is. I can't stay like this. I could feel the fear in his words, but I had to push forward. I had to. If there was one thing I knew, it was that time wasn't just something we could manipulate. It was something that manipulated us. And we were running out of time. I think I know where it is, I said, turning to face the door behind me. We need to go. Without another word, I moved toward the exit, but James didn't follow immediately. He stayed still for a moment, his eyes lost in thought, before finally, reluctantly, joining me. We stepped into the hallway, the cold metal floor underfoot echoing with each step. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. That something, someone, was waiting for us, just out of sight. The air felt thick, oppressive, as though the very walls of this place were alive, breathing, watching. When we reached the end of the hallway, I paused. There, in front of us, was a door, one I hadn't noticed before. It was small, inconspicuous, but the faint hum emanating from beyond it told me everything I needed to know. This is it, I said, my voice low. This is where we need to be. I turned the handle and pushed the door open, revealing the dimly lit room beyond. It looked like a storage space filled with clutter. Old boxes, papers scattered across the floor, and various pieces of equipment I didn't recognize. But in the far corner of the room, almost hidden beneath a stack of discarded files, was the machine. The machine. It sat there, just as it had when we first used it. Its dark metallic surface reflected the faint light, its wires tangled like a nest of snakes. The hum I had heard was coming from it, deep and pulsing, as though it were alive, waiting for us to make our move. I couldn't help but stare at it. It felt like it was calling to me. Its silent invitation impossible to resist. I don't think we should touch it, James said from behind me, his voice tight. What if it's too late? What if we can't fix anything anymore? I turned to him, my mind racing. We have no choice, James. It's the only way. With a deep breath, I stepped forward, reaching out to the machine. As my hand touched the cold metal, the hum grew louder, vibrating through my bones. And then, in an instant, everything changed. The lights flickered. The air grew still, and the room seemed to stretch and bend, as though reality itself were warping around us. The machine began to pulse, and I could feel its energy surging, crackling, consuming everything. It's happening again. But this time, I wasn't ready for what came next. The moment my fingers made contact with the machine, the world seemed to collapse in on itself. The sound that erupted from the device was unlike anything I had ever heard. Sharp, deafening, like 1,000 voices crying out in agony. The hum, now a shrill screech, reverberated through my body, sending a surge of electricity through my veins. I pulled my hand away instinctively, but the damage was already done. The room around me started to distort, stretching and twisting like a bad dream, as though the very fabric of reality was being unraveled thread by thread. James staggered backward, his face contorted in fear.
What did you do?
He screamed, but his voice was drowned out by the noise. The floor beneath us shuddered, as if the building itself were trembling in terror. I tried to focus, to make sense of what was happening, but it was like trying to hold onto water with my bare hands. My thoughts scattered in every direction, each one colliding with the next, and the weight of it all, of the knowledge, the voices, the power, felt unbearable. And then, like a switch being flipped, everything went silent. The hum stopped, the trembling ceased, and the room fell into a suffocating stillness. My heart pounded in my chest, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I felt disoriented, as though I had been thrust into a space that wasn't quite real. The air felt heavy, thick with something I couldn't quite name. "James," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "Are you?" I turned to him, but he wasn't standing where he had been just moments ago. The space where he had been was empty, the air around it swirling like a distortion in time. Panic surged through me as I stumbled forward, my mind racing.
James!
I called out again, my voice cracking. But there was no answer, no sound at all. I felt a cold chill wash over me. My hands shook, my heart pounding in my chest as I tried to make sense of the empty space before me. Something had gone wrong, terribly wrong. I could feel it in my bones. The machine had done something to us, something I couldn't understand. Something that had taken James away, or worse, something that had taken both of us. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Whatever had happened, whatever this was, I had to figure it out. I couldn't let fear control me. Not now. I had to find a way to fix this. To bring James back. But where was he? Where was the real James? I glanced around the room, my eyes searching for any sign of him. The air felt different, colder somehow. The walls seemed to pulse with a faint, unnatural glow, as if the very room itself had been altered by the machine. Everything was off, out of place. The once familiar storage room now felt like a strange, alien space. It was then that I noticed something that made my blood run cold. There, lying on the floor in front of the machine, was a small device, an old, cracked smartphone. Its screen shattered and glowing faintly. I didn't recognize it, but something deep inside me told me that it was important, that it had something to do with what had just happened. I knelt down, my fingers trembling as I picked it up. The phone was warm to the touch, despite the cold atmosphere in the room. As I turned it over in my hands, I saw that the screen was cracked in several places, yet it still displayed a single notification, a voicemail. The message had to be from the future. With shaky hands, I tapped the screen, listening intently as the voicemail began to play. "You shouldn't have done this." A voice crackled through the speaker, deep and distorted. "You've changed everything. The machine isn't just a tool, it's a key. And you've opened a door that was never meant to be opened. There's no going back now." The voice paused, and I could hear the faint sound of someone breathing, ragged and desperate, as if they were running from something. "He's gone. And you'll be next." The message ended abruptly, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. I stared at the phone, my mind racing. "He's gone? Who, James?" No, this couldn't be happening. Not again. I stood up, gripping the phone tightly, my heart pounding. The message was clear. The future had already been set in motion, and I had no idea what the consequences would be. But I had to fix this. I had to find a way to undo the damage. I couldn't let this be the end. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from behind me. I spun around, my body tense, ready for whatever might come next. The door to the storage room slammed open, and I froze. There, standing in the doorway, was a shadow. It was tall and indistinct, like a man, but not quite. Its features were obscured by darkness, as if the very light in the room had been consumed by it. It moved with an unnatural grace, stepping into the room with a slow, deliberate pace. I tried to speak, to call out to it, but my voice caught in my throat. The creature, or whatever it was silent as it advanced toward me, its presence filling the room with an oppressive weight. I backed away, my pulse racing, but the thing didn't stop. It didn't even seem to acknowledge me. It simply moved closer. Its shape more defined now, like a person but wrong. As it came into the light, I saw the face. Or rather, what used to be a face. It was James, but not James. His eyes were wide and empty, devoid of any recognition. His mouth was stretched into a grotesque smile, his skin pale and sickly. He looked wrong. No, this couldn't be real. I staggered back, my mind reeling. "Jamies," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Is that you?" The thing, James, didn't answer. It only continued to smile. Its eyes locked on mine with a hunger that made my blood run cold. And then, with a voice that wasn't his own, it spoke. "You should have never come here." The words, spoken in a voice that wasn't James's, echoed in my ears, chilling me to the core. The smile on the creature's face twisted into something malevolent, its eyes dark and empty like an abyss. I could feel it, feel the weight of whatever this thing was, and it wasn't just standing there in front of me. It was watching me, waiting for something. The air around me felt suffocating, thick with the strange energy that had been building ever since I touched the machine. I had to move. I couldn't just stand here and wait for whatever this thing was to decide my fate. But my body was frozen in place, as if some invisible force had pinned me down. My pulse thundered in my ears, drowning out everything else. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the thing that used to be James. My throat was tight, every instinct screaming at me to run, to get out of here. But where could I go? What was left to run to? "You should have never come here," it repeated, its grin widening unnaturally. It took another slow step forward, its feet gliding across the floor like it wasn't quite walking at all. The movement was off, fluid like a shadow or a reflection of something trying too hard to be real. I couldn't explain it, but I could feel it in my bones. This thing didn't belong. "You're not him," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to shout, to demand answers, but the words wouldn't come. The thing's head tilted, as if it were considering my words. "Not him," it repeated, its lips curling into a mocking imitation of a smile. "Not anymore." It took another step, and the space around it seemed to bend. I could feel the room warping in ways I couldn't comprehend, distorting, like reality itself was crumbling at the edges. The shadows on the walls flickered, and the machine, the one I had touched, buzzed to life again. Its hum, once barely audible, was now deafening, a constant shrill that made my teeth ache. I stumbled backward, desperate to escape, but my legs felt like lead. The thing, James, didn't move any faster, but each step it took brought it closer to me. With each movement, the room seemed to shrink, the air growing heavier, as though it was being sucked into the space it occupied. "You're not supposed to be here," I said, my voice trembling now. This isn't real." The creature's smile grew wider, its face contorting in ways that shouldn't have been possible. "Real," it said with a distorted laugh. "What is real anymore?" Suddenly, the lights flickered above, and the machine screeched louder, the noise cutting through the thick silence like a jagged blade. I could feel something inside me, a panic, a sense of urgency that I hadn't felt before, like I was running out of time. The creature, James, leaned in closer. Its presence seemed to press against my chest, making it hard to breathe. "Time's already running out, friend," I gasped, my heart racing as the world around me began to shift once more. The edges of reality were blurring. The walls seemed to pulse like a heartbeat, the shadows around us twisting and stretching unnaturally. My head spun, the sensation of being pulled in multiple directions at once making it impossible to focus. It was as if the very fabric of time had been torn, the past and future colliding in one violent surge. I didn't want this. I choked out, the words feeling hollow. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. James, if that was still even him, reached out with a hand, his fingers elongated, twitching unnaturally. I flinched, instinctively pulling back. "No one ever does," it said, its voice like a cold wind. "But now you're part of it. There's no going back." I couldn't understand it, couldn't grasp what it meant. What was it talking about? What did it mean that I was part of it? Before I could respond, the creature's form flickered, its body momentarily dissolving into a haze of static. I blinked, trying to make sense of it, but by the time I refocused, it was gone. Vanished into the distortion that had begun to consume the room. I stumbled backward, my mind reeling, my thoughts a mess of confusion and fear. What just happened? Where did it go? Where was James? I looked around, panicked. The walls seemed to have shifted entirely, the storage room now resembling something foreign. Nothing was where it should be. The door I had entered through was gone, replaced by a dark, swirling vortex that I couldn't make sense of. It felt wrong, like the boundaries between spaces had been shattered. I had to get out. I had to find a way to fix this. But as I turned toward the strange vortex, a loud crack echoed through the room. My eyes shot to the source of the sound, and my breath hitched in my throat. James, or what was left of him, was back. But this time he wasn't standing in front of me. He was standing in the doorway that hadn't been there a moment ago, and he wasn't alone. Behind him, emerging from the shifting shadows, were dozens, no, hundreds of figures. All of them wearing the same distorted, twisted grin. All of them wrong. "You're too late." The thing that had once been James said, its voice now a cacophony of different tones, like a chorus of whispers, all speaking at once. "The future is already here." And then, in the blink of an eye, the vortex expanded, and the figures surged forward. Their eyes all locked onto me. There was no escape. The ground beneath my feet seemed to tremble, as if the very foundation of reality was cracking open. The dark figures, once a distant blur, were now only a few feet away, their eyes gleaming with something unnatural. Their movements were jerky, disjointed, as though they were puppets being controlled by invisible strings. The creature that had once been James stood at the forefront, its grin never faltering. Behind it, the others, the countless figures, moved like shadows, their forms shifting, bending in ways that made my stomach churn. They were closing in on me, their eyes all fixed on one target, me. I wanted to run. I needed to run. But my legs wouldn't move. I couldn't tear my gaze away from the nightmare unfolding before me. Every instinct screamed at me to get away, but the terror had paralyzed me, my mind trapped in a loop of dread and confusion. You can't run from what's coming. The thing, James, or whatever it had become, said, its voice now layered with the chorus of countless voices, each one blending together into something monstrous. "You're already a part of it." A cold sweat beaded on my forehead as I swallowed hard, my throat dry. I couldn't process what was happening. This couldn't be real. None of this made sense. "What do you want from me?" My voice cracked, barely above a whisper. The thing took a slow step forward, its movements eerie and fluid. "What we want? Oh, we don't want anything. Not really. You, on the other hand, have something we need." Its smile twisted even more, if that was possible, as if it were savoring every moment of my fear. I tried to speak, to demand an explanation, but the words stuck in my throat. The world around me felt like it was closing in, the walls shrinking, the air thickening. The figures behind it swarmed closer, their footsteps silent, but I could hear their presence. It was as though they were inside my head, their whispers crawling into my ears. "You've been meddling with things you don't understand." The creature continued, its tone almost pitying. "But now, you've learned too much. And there's no turning back." I tried to back away, but my feet were stuck. It was as if the very air around me had become thick with something that held me in place. My heart was pounding so loud that I could barely hear anything else. Every muscle in my body screamed for release, but I was frozen. helpless. And then, the machine, the cursed machine I'd touched, started up again, its hum growing louder, its metallic screech vibrating through my bones. The figures in front of me didn't seem to notice the sound, but I could feel it deep in my chest. It was calling out to me, pulling me in. "It's not just a machine," the creature said, as if reading my thoughts. "It's a door, a bridge between worlds." A cold shiver ran down my spine. A door between worlds. What did that mean? Was I supposed to go through it? Was that the only way to stop whatever was coming? I tried to speak again, but my throat was dry, my voice barely a whisper. "What happens if I go through?" The thing didn't answer immediately. Instead, it tilted its head, studying me, as though it were enjoying the moment, savoring my confusion. "You'll see," it said finally, its voice becoming low and dangerous. "You'll see what happens when you try to change the course of fate. When you meddle with things you can't control." A horrible, gut-wrenching realization hit me like a tidal wave. The voices, the figures, everything that had been happening. The voicemail, the machine, the twisted version of James. It was all connected. And I was at the center of it. I had done something, opened something that shouldn't have been opened. And now, there was no way out. The figures behind the creature began to move, inching closer, their eyes glowing brighter with every step. They didn't speak, but I could hear their thoughts, feel them, in my head. There was no escape from this, no turning back. The creature stepped closer, its grin widening. "It's not too late to join us, you know, to see what lies beyond. The future is waiting, and it's always been in your hands. All you had to do was listen." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I could feel the pull of the machine behind me, the strange energy vibrating through the space. I was torn between running, if I could, and stepping into whatever nightmare awaited me. "You don't have a choice," the thing said softly, as if reading my mind. "You never did." I swallowed, trying to steady my breathing. What happens if I don't listen? What happens if I refuse?" The creature's laugh echoed, a deep, resonant sound that seemed to reverberate through the very walls of the room. "Refuse." It echoed the word like a dark joke. "There's no refusing. There's only becoming." I felt the walls of the room tremble again, the space around me warping and bending like a living thing. The figures behind the creature moved closer, their eyes never leaving me. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I was trapped. And then, in a flash of light, everything changed. The machine hummed louder, the vortex expanding once more. The figures surged forward, and in the distance, I could hear a voice I recognized. It was James. But it wasn't the James I had known. "It's too late for you," the voice whispered, distant and cold. "You should have never come." And then, everything went dark. The darkness around me was suffocating, more oppressive than the thickest night. It wasn't just an absence of light. It felt like something was pulling at my very soul. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. It was as if time itself had stopped, and I was caught in its frozen grip. But then there was a noise. A faint hum, low and resonant. It grew louder with each passing second, vibrating through my bones, making my skin crawl. The air began to shift, to stir with a strange energy, as though the very atmosphere was alive. I tried to call out, but no words came. My voice was trapped, stuck in the back of my throat, like it had been stolen from me. And then, without warning, the darkness split open. It wasn't like light flooding in, though. It was more like a tear in the fabric of the world itself. The edges of the rift were jagged, like shards of glass that cut through the air, and through it I could see shapes, blurry, shifting. The figures that had surrounded me before. They weren't just in my head anymore. They were real somehow. The hum grew louder, and the figures began to step through the rift, one by one. Their eyes glowed in the darkness, unnaturally bright, casting an eerie light on everything they touched. Their faces were twisted, their features warped, as if they were only half formed. The creature that had once been James, no, whatever it was now, stepped through the rift first, its grin still stretched unnaturally wide. "Let's go," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "We have to go in." And with that, we moved forward toward the building. The whispering in the trees grew louder still, but I ignored it. For now, the only thing that mattered was getting to the source, whatever it was, and stopping this madness before it was too late. The building loomed ahead, an eerie silhouette against the pale moonlight. Its walls were crumbling, and the roof had caved in at one corner, leaving a gaping hole where the ceiling once stood. Ivy and moss had overtaken the structure, creeping up the sides like fingers clutching at the past. Despite the stillness, the air felt charged, as though something was waiting inside, watching us, anticipating our arrival. I could feel the tension in my chest tightening with every step, a gnawing sense that we were walking into the heart of something we weren't meant to understand. Something ancient. The man in the suit led the way, his pace steady despite the broken ground. I glanced at James, whose face was a mask of confusion and fear. We hadn't had time to discuss much, everything had moved too fast, and the world around us seemed to be unraveling in ways that defied logic. "What is this place?" James whispered, his voice barely audible. "What are we looking for?" I didn't have an answer, only the vague feeling that, if we could just find the source, we might be able to put an end to all this. But what was the source? And why did it feel like it had been waiting for us? The man in the suit stopped at the entrance, his hand brushing against the doorframe as though feeling the structure, sensing something I couldn't. He turned back to us, his expression unreadable. "You won't find the answers here, but you will find the key. The truth lies beyond what you can see." His cryptic words did little to calm my growing unease, but I nodded anyway. We had no other choice. The door creaked as we pushed it open, the sound scraping across the silence like a warning. Inside, the air was thick with dust, the musty scent of forgotten things, and the faintest hint of something metallic. It was dim, but the moonlight filtered through the cracks in the walls, casting jagged shadows on the floor. There were old, broken pieces of furniture scattered around. Chairs turned on their sides, shattered glass, and what looked like ancient newspapers yellowing with age. But it wasn't the dilapidated furniture that caught my attention. It was the center of the room. In the middle of the space stood a strange, metallic object. At first glance, it resembled some sort of machine, sleek and cylindrical, but it wasn't like anything I had ever seen. It hummed faintly, almost imperceptibly, and for a moment, I could have sworn I felt the air shift around it. "This is it," the man in the suit said, his voice almost reverent. "The source." I stepped closer, my curiosity battling with the dread twisting in my stomach. The machine, or whatever it was, seemed to be pulsating with energy, the hum vibrating in the air around it. There were symbols carved into its surface, symbols that I couldn't quite read, but they felt familiar, like I had seen them before. Somewhere, somehow. James reached out tentatively, his fingers brushing against the metal. "What is this? What's it for?" The man in the suit didn't immediately respond. He stood back, watching us carefully. "It's not what it seems. It was built to manipulate time, to alter it. But something went wrong, and now it's been leaking." "Leaking?" I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. "Leaking what?" He hesitated, his gaze flickering to the machine before returning to us. "Information. Events. Pieces of the future. It's been trying to reach you, trying to warn you, or maybe just confuse you." I felt the weight of his words sink in, but they only raised more questions. "What do you mean? It's trying to reach us. How?" The man exhaled slowly, as if considering how much to reveal. The machine, it's linked to your future, your past. It's what sent you the voicemail. It's trying to send you messages, but it's been corrupted, twisted. It's pulling fragments of time into itself, and that's what's been causing the disturbances. The voices you hear, those are the fragments of your future self trying to reach you. But it's not just your future. It's mixing timelines, creating chaos. I stepped back, my mind racing. So those voices, they're not just mine. They're coming from other versions of me. Exactly, the man said. The machine, it's destabilizing everything. Every choice you've made, every decision is being fed into it, and it's causing the future to break apart, piece by piece. The voices are echoes, warnings, but they're also lies. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. But why me? Why are we hearing them? Why is it trying to contact us? He didn't answer right away. His eyes flickered to the machine again, and for a brief moment, I could almost see the uncertainty behind his calm demeanor. Because you're the ones who can stop it. The voicemail, it was a signal, a call for help from yourself. But you're not the only one affected. The machine is trying to use you, to manipulate you, to keep feeding it what it wants. James stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. So what do we do? How do we stop it? The man in the suit met his gaze, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of something almost regretful in his eyes. You can't stop it. Not entirely. But you can change the course. You can close the loop. You just need to make a choice. A choice. I repeated. What kind of choice? He didn't answer directly. Instead, he gestured to the machine. The choice is yours. Do you destroy it? Or do you try to fix it? Either way, you're tied to it now. Your past, your future, they've already been rewritten. The weight of his words hit me hard. And I realized the truth of it. We were already caught in this. There was no escaping it. Every choice, every move we made had already set us on this path. The machine, the voices, the strange twists of time, they were all part of something much bigger than us. The decision loomed before us, and it felt like we were standing on the edge of a precipice, unsure whether to jump or step back. And then I heard it again, the whisper. This time, it wasn't distant. It was right in my ear, the voice so clear it almost made my heart stop. Turn back, before it's too late. It was my voice, again. But this time I didn't hesitate. The voice still echoed in my mind as I stood frozen in place. My eyes locked onto the strange, humming machine at the center of the room. Turn back, before it's too late. I didn't know if it was a warning or a plea, but the words were like a chilling reminder of everything that had gone wrong since the voicemail had first arrived. James was standing beside me now, his face pale, eyes wide, his breath shallow. He was clearly as torn as I was. We'd come here seeking answers, but what we'd found was far more unsettling than we could have imagined. A machine designed to manipulate time, fragments of the future seeping through, and voices, countless voices from other versions of ourselves. All of it pointed to one horrifying truth: nothing we knew was real anymore. The man in the suit was still watching us, his expression unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, something that seemed to say he knew exactly what we were feeling. Fear, confusion, uncertainty. He had been down this path before, and somehow, I knew he was waiting for us to make the next move. Do you hear it too? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. James nodded, the tremor in his voice betraying the fear that was slowly clawing its way up his spine. It's like it's trying to speak to us, but it doesn't make sense. Nothing makes sense anymore. The man in the suit's eyes narrowed as he studied us, his gaze shifting between the two of us. You're starting to understand. The voices are fragments, pieces of time, moments that have already passed or haven't happened yet. They're echoes, but they're also warnings. The future, it's trying to rewrite itself. The weight of his words felt like a heavy stone sinking in my stomach. Rewrite itself. I repeated, struggling to understand. But how? And why? He stepped closer to the machine, his hand hovering just above it, as if he could feel the electricity buzzing in the air. Because the machine is more than just a time manipulator. It's a conduit. It pulls fragments from all different timelines, timelines that have been altered, erased, or corrupted. It's like a broken mirror reflecting 1,000 versions of reality. I swallowed hard, trying to process the enormity of what he was saying. So, we're not just hearing voices from our future. We're hearing voices from other timelines. Yes, the man replied. And some of those timelines are not your own. Some of them belong to versions of you that never made it, choices you never got to make. Others are from the future, the one that's slipping away, the one you're trying to save. I shook my head, feeling like I was drowning in a sea of contradictions. But how do we stop it? How do we fix this? He didn't answer right away. His eyes drifted back to the machine, the hum growing louder now, vibrating in the air like a pulse. You can't fix it. Not fully. Time has been fractured too much. The best you can do is close the loop. Close the loop, James asked, his voice tinged with desperation. What does that even mean? The man in the suit didn't look at us as he answered, his gaze still fixed on the machine. It means you'll have to make a choice. A decision that will either mend the rift or tear it open even further. If you destroy it, you may lose everything. If you try to fix it, you'll risk losing yourselves in the process. The tension in the room grew thicker with every passing second. I could feel the weight of the decision bearing down on me, the suffocating pressure of knowing that whatever we did next could change everything. But then there was a sound, a low, guttural groan from the machine, almost like it was alive. A pulse of light shot from its core, blindingly bright, and the floor beneath our feet seemed to shudder in response. The walls of the room creaked and groaned, as if the very foundation of the building was trembling under the strain of what was happening. James staggered backward, his hand reaching out to steady himself against the wall. What the hell is happening? The machine is destabilizing, the man in the suit said, his voice urgent now. It's been trying to collapse multiple timelines into one, and it's about to implode. If you don't make a choice now, it will consume everything. I felt a surge of panic rise in my chest. I could hear the voices again, closer this time, as though they were coming from within the very walls themselves. Turn back. It's too late. Save us. The voices of my future selves, my past selves, pleading for something. I couldn't make sense of it all, but one thing was clear. We couldn't let this machine keep pulling at the threads of time. Do you trust me? The man in the suit asked suddenly, his eyes locking onto mine. I hesitated, feeling the weight of his gaze pressing down on me. What do you mean? He didn't answer directly. Instead, he gestured to the machine again, his hand sweeping through the air as if urging us to take action. You have to decide. If you want to stop it, you have to destroy it. But that may cost you everything, you know. Or you can try to repair it, but the cost of that might be more than you're willing to pay. I turned to James, who was still visibly shaken. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the struggle between hope and fear, between doing something, anything, or running away from it all. I don't know if we can fix this, I said, my voice tight. But we have to try. We can't let it keep unraveling everything. James nodded, though there was uncertainty in his expression. What's the plan? The man in the suit's lips twitched into something that could have been a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. There is no plan. There's only the choice, and the consequences. With that, he stepped away from the machine, giving us room. It was up to us now. The hum from the machine intensified, filling the room with an oppressive, vibrating pressure. My heart raced as I looked at the metallic contraption before me, knowing that whatever choice I made here would decide not just my future, but everyone's. I reached out a trembling hand toward the machine. I hovered over the machine, my fingers trembling just inches from its surface. The air was thick with tension, the hum of the machine vibrating through my chest like a warning. Every fiber of my being screamed for me to pull back, to walk away from this impossible situation. But the voices, those voices, kept echoing in my mind, filling my thoughts with doubt and urgency. Fix it. Repair the timeline. You'll lose everything if you don't. No. Destroy it. You don't know what you're dealing with! It's too late. The voices seemed to be pulling me in different directions. Each one sounded desperate, as if they were fighting for their own version of reality to survive. My fingers hovered a moment longer, the weight of the decision pressing down on me like 1,000 tons of stone. James, I whispered, not taking my eyes off the machine. What do we do? James was pacing now, the agitation obvious in every step. His breath was shallow, his hands running through his hair as if trying to clear his thoughts. I don't know, he muttered. This is insane. How can we fix time? How can we even know if fixing it is the right thing to do? I could feel his panic matching my own. We had never been prepared for something like this. No one could have prepared us. The man in the suit stood silently behind us, his face unreadable, waiting. He wasn't offering guidance anymore, his role now reduced to silent observation. The weight of his silence only made the decision feel heavier. I could feel the machine's energy vibrating in the air, its hum growing louder, almost deafening. It was as if it was feeding off our uncertainty, pushing us toward a decision. The longer I hesitated, the more intense the pressure seemed to become. Suddenly, I felt a shift in the atmosphere, a crackling sound that made my skin tingle. The room seemed to grow colder, the very walls now groaning, as if under some invisible strain. The machine pulsed with light, a blinding white flash that made me flinch. Then, the voice came again, not from the machine, but from behind me. Are you ready to make the choice? I spun around to see the man in the suit, his face as impassive as ever. He wasn't looking at the machine anymore. He was watching us with a strange, almost calculating look in his eyes. Ready, I repeated, my voice rising in disbelief. What do you mean, ready? He stepped forward, his gaze locked onto mine. This isn't just a question of fixing or destroying the machine. This is a question of who you want to be. Your future selves are calling to you, trying to pull you in different directions. But they aren't you. Not truly. They are the consequences of decisions you haven't made yet. Each voice is a different outcome, a different version of who you could be. I felt the weight of his words settle in my chest, like a leaden ball pressing down on my heart. But we have to choose, don't we? We can't just leave things as they are. The man nodded slowly, his expression darkening. No, you can't. Not anymore. Time is fracturing. If you don't make a decision now, it will consume you all. I turned back to the machine, my mind racing. What if we're making the wrong choice? What if fixing things only makes them worse? But then, there was a shift in the voices, a sudden clarity. Save us. It wasn't a plea this time. It was a command, a single voice rising above the others. My heart stopped as I recognized it. My blood running cold, it was my own voice, and the words it spoke were more chilling than anything else I had heard so far. Save us or lose everything. It was the same voice, the one I'd heard on the voicemail, coming from the future. The same voice that had warned me about the disaster. The same voice that had been telling me I was too late. But this time, it wasn't a warning, it was a plea. I can't, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I don't know what's real anymore. You'll never know if you don't act. the man in the suit said, his voice cutting through the air like a knife. But time is running out. I looked at James. His eyes were wide with uncertainty, but there was something else there too. Something that told me he was ready to act. He was ready to choose. "We need to stop this," James said, his voice steady, though his hands were still shaking. "We need to fix it before it's too late. Before we lose everything." I nodded slowly, the decision settling into my bones. This was it. The moment that would define everything. "All right," I said, my voice stronger now. "Let's fix it. Let's make the choice." The man in the suit didn't move, but I could see a flicker of something in his eyes. Approval, disappointment. It was hard to tell. "Very well," he said, "but understand this, once you make the choice, there's no turning back." I turned to the machine, steeling myself. The voices seemed to rise again, louder now, but I focused on the one that mattered. The voice from the future, the one that had warned me, the one that had spoken the truth. With a deep breath, I placed my hand on the machine's surface. The world seemed to bend, the air thickening, and the ground beneath my feet shook violently. A deafening roar filled the room, a sound unlike anything I had ever heard, as though time itself was breaking apart. And then, everything went dark. The darkness enveloped me, thick and suffocating. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the rhythm chaotic, almost frantic. My breath came in shallow gasps, the cold air biting at my skin, as if the very atmosphere had turned against me. My mind screamed in panic, but my body refused to respond. It was as though time itself had frozen, and all I could do was wait. Wait for what? Was this it? Had we made the wrong choice? Was I trapped in some void, disconnected from everything I knew, all because of a decision I didn't fully understand? The void around me shifted. A strange, crackling sensation filled the air, like electricity snapping through the atmosphere. My body tingled, a strange warmth replacing the freezing cold that had initially settled in. I blinked, but the darkness didn't dissipate. No light, no form, just the feeling that something, or someone, was watching me. Then I heard it. A voice. A whisper, faint at first, but growing clearer with each passing second. "James." My name. It echoed through the darkness, a mere breath on the wind. It was impossible to place where it had come from. Forward, backward, all around, but I knew it. "James," it called again. I stood frozen in place. My name, my own voice, lingering in the air. My heart raced, and I could feel the sweat beading on my forehead despite the chill. I wasn't alone. "I'm here," I said, my voice weak but desperate. "I'm here." "What's happening? What is this?" The voice didn't answer directly. Instead, the sound of footsteps began to echo around me, slowly at first, then steadily increasing in pace. They were coming closer. With each step, the atmosphere seemed to change, no longer cold and oppressive, but heavier. The sensation of being watched grew until it was suffocating. And then, I saw it. A shadow. A figure emerging from the darkness. It wasn't human, at least not in the way I understood the word. Its form was blurred, shifting and pulsating, as if made of the very darkness itself. Its shape twisted and turned, never fully solidifying, yet somehow it radiated a presence. A power. And within that presence, I could feel a force I couldn't explain. It was all around me, pressing in, suffocating me. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "What do you want from me?" The figure didn't respond, at least not in words. Instead, it raised one arm. No, not an arm, but something that resembled an extension of the shadow itself. It reached out toward me, its movement fluid and unnatural. The closer it got, the more intense the sensation became. I could feel it. This overwhelming sense that it wasn't a creature, but a force. An entity. Something that existed outside of time, beyond the constraints of reality. "It's happening," I thought. The timeline is shifting again. The machine? What did it do? The figure's presence seemed to ripple like a wave in water. And then a voice, not my own but eerily familiar, filled my mind. It was as if 1,000 voices were speaking at once, each one pulling at my very soul. You should never have tried to fix it. You think you can escape the inevitable. My blood ran cold. The voice, it was the same one I'd heard on the voicemail from the future, but it was different now, twisted. There was malice in it, a cold, calculating tone. This is what happens when you defy time, the voice continued. You are not the first to make this mistake, and you won't be the last. The words were like daggers, each one plunging deeper into my mind. I fought to keep my composure, to stay grounded. But the presence of the figure, whatever it was, felt like it was tearing at the very fabric of my being. No, I whispered. No, I couldn't have. This was the only way. We had to fix it. We had to make the choice! The figure loomed closer, its form now almost tangible, and I could feel its cold, unnatural presence filling the space around me. The air seemed to distort, the very fabric of reality bending under its influence. The choice was never yours to make, the voice said, its tone dripping with disdain. Time doesn't care about your decisions. You're just a piece in a game you don't understand. Now, you will pay the price for meddling where you don't belong. A shiver ran down my spine as the figure's shadow, like arm, reached out to me. The air felt charged, crackling with energy, and I could feel the electricity in the space around me. My skin burned as if the very atmosphere was alive, responding to its presence. No, I tried to move, to break free from the suffocating grip of whatever this was, but my body wouldn't respond. My limbs were frozen, my mind scrambling for some way to escape. But there was nothing, no way out. The figure's voice reached into my mind again, more forceful this time, more insistent. You cannot escape. I closed my eyes, clenching my fists, trying to block out the sound. I refused to let it consume me. But then, just as quickly as it had started, the pressure stopped. The overwhelming weight, the oppressive force that had been choking me, lifted. The darkness slowly began to fade, replaced by a light so bright I could barely keep my eyes open. It felt like a reset, like the universe was starting over. When I opened my eyes again, I was no longer alone. James stood before me, his face pale, his eyes wide with fear. He didn't seem to notice the shadowy figure that had been looming over us moments before. His gaze was fixed on me, and I could tell something had changed. "Yo," he started, his voice trembling. You're not the same." I shook my head, still disoriented, still trying to piece together what had just happened, the timeline, the voices, the machine. It was all too much. Too fast. My mind couldn't process it. But I knew one thing for sure. This isn't over. I didn't want to. I was terrified of what the call might bring, but I knew I couldn't run from it. Not now. Not when everything felt like it was teetering on the edge of something far worse. With trembling hands, I swiped to answer. Hello. My voice barely sounded like my own. There was a long silence on the other end. Then, a voice, cold and emotionless, spoke. "It's me, from the future. You've made your choice. Now you have to live with it." I froze. I didn't know what to say, what to do. The voice sounded like mine, but there was something wrong with it. Something distant, detached. Like it was a reflection of me that wasn't quite real. The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at the phone, feeling my hands grow clammy as I processed the words that had just been spoken. I wasn't sure what they meant, but it was clear that whatever was happening, it was too late to turn back now. I looked at James, who seemed equally shaken, his eyes wide with disbelief. "What the hell was that?" he whispered. "I don't know," I said, my voice cracking. "But I think we just crossed a line, and there's no going back from this." I stared at the phone, the screen still glowing from the call. The words, "It's me. From the future. You've made your choice. Now you have to live with it." echoed in my mind, a haunting whisper I couldn't shake. My breath caught in my throat as I realized how much was at stake now. James didn't speak. His silence was deafening. He was still staring at me, his face pale, eyes wide with shock and confusion. The moment felt suspended in time, like the air itself had frozen. "What does this mean?" I finally whispered, my voice trembling as the weight of the situation settled on me. James blinked as though he was coming back to reality. "I don't know. But what the hell just happened?" I felt a sickening churn in my stomach, a tight knot that wouldn't loosen. "You've made your choice." The words from the call. It had to be referring to something I had already decided, or maybe something that was about to happen. But what choice had I made? And why did it feel like I was walking deeper into some kind of trap? "I don't remember making any choice," I muttered, shaking my head. The more I tried to process the voicemail, the more my mind slipped into chaos. It was as though I was standing at the edge of a cliff, unable to see the bottom, but knowing one wrong move would send me falling into the abyss. James rubbed his temples, clearly trying to make sense of things himself. "Maybe you're not supposed to remember yet. Maybe you made the choice without realizing it, like in a dream." I looked at him, searching his face for something solid, something to hold on to. But the uncertainty in his eyes mirrored my own. I couldn't rely on him for answers. If anything, I was starting to wonder if I could trust anyone. The voicemail had warned me not to trust anyone, but it didn't say why. It didn't say what I should do next. All I knew was that something was changing, something big, and I wasn't ready for it. "Okay, think," I said, trying to steady my voice. The voicemail said I'd know who to avoid. It said not to make contact, but it didn't say who I was supposed to avoid. And it didn't say what I should do. I don't know how to handle this. I don't know what to believe. James leaned back on the couch, his eyes narrowing as if he was looking through me. "What if the voicemail is trying to protect you? What if it's telling you not to make contact because the person you're supposed to meet will be dangerous?" The idea of a potential danger lurking in the future made my skin crawl. The thought that someone was watching me, someone who knew what was going to happen before it did, made me feel powerless. "What if it's not just one person?" I said softly. "What if it's everyone?" James didn't respond right away. The silence between us grew heavy again, as if the room itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next move. His eyes flicked to the door, as if considering something. Finally, he spoke. "Maybe we should go to the police. Tell them about the voicemail. I mean, if someone's messing with your head, there's got to be some sort of..." "No." I cut him off, the words slipping out before I could think. "No, I can't. I can't trust anyone, not even the police." The voicemail said, "Not to trust anyone." James finished the sentence for me. He let out a deep sigh, rubbing his face in frustration. "I get it, okay? But that's insane. If you don't trust anyone, what's left? You're just going to keep this to yourself. Keep living in this nightmare." I bit my lip, the uncertainty creeping back in. He was right. The longer I kept all this to myself, the more it felt like I was losing control. But trusting anyone, even James, felt like a dangerous gamble. Who could I trust when the only person who could offer me guidance was me, or a version of me from the future? "I don't know, James. I'm not sure I can trust myself, let alone anyone else," I muttered, staring at the ground. The weight of the decision felt too much to bear. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again, pulling me out of my thoughts. I looked down at it, a new message flashing on the screen. My heart skipped a beat as I read the notification. "You're running out of time. They're watching. Move quickly." It was from an unknown number. I felt the blood drain from my face. My palms began to sweat as I held the phone, staring at the message like it was some kind of warning. A direct, threatening message that I couldn't ignore. Someone was watching me. Someone who knew exactly what was going on. They knew what I had done, and they knew what I was planning to do. James, I think we need to leave. Now, I said, my voice tight with fear. He looked up from his place on the couch, his face mirroring my panic. What? Why? What's going on? I showed him the phone, and his eyes widened as he read the message. His lips parted in shock, but no words came out. I don't know who's behind this, but they know everything. They know I got the voicemail. They know what I'm thinking. I felt the knot in my stomach tighten, the pressure mounting until I thought I might suffocate under it. We're not safe here anymore. We need to get out before it's too late. James nodded, his expression grim. Okay, let's go. We'll figure it out later, but we need to move fast, if we're being watched. He was cut off by a loud, insistent knock at the door. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. The knock came again, louder this time, as if whoever was on the other side was growing impatient. Don't open it, I whispered, my voice barely audible. James turned to me, his face pale, his eyes filled with uncertainty. But before either of us could speak, the door handle rattled. And then it turned. The door handle turned slowly, the metallic sound of it scraping against the frame sending a shiver down my spine. My heartbeat thundered in my chest, drowning out everything else. Every instinct told me to move, to run, to hide, to do anything but stand frozen in place, but I couldn't. My feet felt like lead, rooted to the floor by some invisible force. James and I exchanged a glance, both of us silently weighing our options. It was clear we couldn't just stand here. The message, the warnings, it was all too real, too imminent. The door handle jiggled once more, then stopped. Silence filled the room, the kind of silence that presses against your skin, making you feel suffocated. For a moment, I dared to believe maybe the person outside would just leave, but then, another knock. Harder, more urgent. Are you going to open it? James asked, his voice shaky. I didn't answer right away. What could I say? That I was terrified. That everything felt wrong, like some kind of nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Before I could respond, the door swung open. I recoiled, stepping back instinctively. Standing in the doorway was a figure I didn't recognize. A man in a dark suit, his face obscured by a wide, brimmed hat. His eyes were hidden behind large, reflective sunglasses, making it impossible to read his expression. He didn't speak right away, just stood there, his presence unnerving in the silence that followed. James instinctively took a step forward, but I grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice coming out more forceful than I expected. The man didn't move. His gaze seemed to pierce through the glasses, locking onto me in a way that made me feel exposed. "I'm the one who's been trying to warn you," he said finally, his voice low and steady. I couldn't make sense of what he was saying. Warn me about what? What could this stranger possibly know about everything that had happened in the last few hours? My thoughts spun, trying to find some kind of logic in the chaos, but nothing made sense. "I've been watching," he continued, his words slow, deliberate. "You're running out of time. They're already too close. You need to come with me." I shook my head, my mind racing. "Who are they? And what do you mean I'm running out of time?" He didn't answer immediately, just stood there, waiting. Then, with a barely perceptible movement, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small device. He didn't show it to us directly, but I caught a glimpse of it, something metallic, sleek, and unfamiliar. A phone. No, it was too small. "You've seen the messages," he said, as though reading my mind. "You've heard the voicemails. Everything you're experiencing is connected to a choice you've already made." I felt my pulse quicken. A choice I'd already made. I had no memory of such a choice. The voicemail had warned me, yes, but that was the first real clue I had about any of this. The strange messages, the vague warnings. How could they be tied to a choice I didn't even remember? What choice? I asked, my voice trembling despite myself. I don't understand. The man's lips twitched, as though he was debating whether or not to tell me. You'll understand soon enough. But first, you need to trust me. Trust you? I repeated, almost laughing.
Don't even know who you are?
How can I trust you? He stepped forward, his movements deliberate, calm. I know this is hard to believe, but I'm trying to help you. Right now, there are forces at play you don't fully comprehend. Forces that want to stop you from making the right decision. That's why I'm here. I'm trying to help you get ahead of them, before they reach you. A chill ran through me as his words sank in. Who's trying to stop me? Why? The man hesitated before speaking again. Because the future depends on the choice you make. The wrong decision could unravel everything, and if you don't act fast, it'll be too late to fix it. James stepped forward, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. What are you talking about? What future? And who the hell are you? The man's gaze flicked briefly to James before returning to me. He sighed, as though running out of patience. You don't have time for questions. You need to move now. They're tracking your every move. I glanced at James, but he was just as confused as I was. The sense of urgency in the man's voice sent a ripple of fear through me. Was he lying? Could I trust him? And if not, what kind of danger were we in? I started to speak but was interrupted by another sudden noise. A faint, high-pitched ringing, like a phone vibrating on a hard surface. It seemed to come from somewhere deep inside the house, and for a moment, I thought it was just my nerves playing tricks on me. But the sound grew louder, more insistent. The same phone, like ringing. It was coming from the corner of the living room. The man turned abruptly, his eyes locking onto the source of the noise. His expression shifted, turning from calm to sharp, urgent. No time, he muttered under his breath before quickly turning back to me. You don't have much time left. Get ready. Before I could respond, he took a step forward, grabbed my arm, and pulled me toward the door. James didn't hesitate for long, following us out into the hallway, but I barely noticed. My mind was racing, the ringing growing louder with every step. As we passed the doorway, I heard something, a voice. Soft at first, but growing clearer. You didn't listen. You're making the wrong decision. The voice was unmistakable. It was me. The hallway stretched out before us, dimly lit by the flickering lights overhead. The silence that followed the strange voice, my own voice, was thick, like it was clinging to everything around us. My heart hammered in my chest, and I could feel the panic rising in me. Who was that? What did it mean? And why was it telling me I was making the wrong decision? The man in the suit kept moving ahead of us, his grip still firm on my arm. But he didn't look back. His eyes remained fixed on the path in front of him, and for a moment, I almost felt like I was being dragged along by someone who knew exactly what was happening, as though I were a passenger in my own life. Where are we going? I finally forced out, trying to steady my breath. The ringing sound had stopped, but the tension hadn't left. It felt like we were walking on the edge of something huge and dangerous. To safety, the man replied without missing a beat. The more questions you ask, the further you get from the truth. Just keep moving. I glanced at James, but he was just as lost as I was. The look on his face was a mixture of confusion and growing fear. Are we seriously trusting this guy? He asked in a low voice. But there was no mistaking the unease in his words. I didn't know how to answer him. Part of me screamed that we were walking straight into danger, but the other part, this part that had been listening to the strange messages, this part that had heard my own voice warning me, felt like we didn't have much of a choice. Whatever was happening, we needed to get ahead of it. But what if we were already too late? I opened my mouth to respond, but the words died in my throat as the man in the suit suddenly stopped. He raised a hand, signaling us to be silent. He was looking down at his wrist, where a strange, glowing device, something like a watch but with no clear face, was buzzing. His lips pressed into a thin line, and for the first time since we met him, I saw a flicker of concern in his eyes. "We're running out of time," he muttered, more to himself than to us. He tapped something on the watch, and immediately the light dimmed, returning to its normal hue. He looked back at us. "There's a change in the plan. We need to move faster." Before I could ask what he meant, the door at the end of the hallway, the front door, swung open with a loud crash. A gust of wind swept through the house, the temperature plummeting. My breath caught in my throat. The air felt wrong, like it had been altered in some way I couldn't understand. "Go," the man barked, pushing us toward the door. "Run." We didn't hesitate. We followed him into the open air, the cool wind brushing against my skin. It felt like stepping into another world, like we'd crossed over into something that didn't make sense, something that wasn't quite real. The trees swayed ominously in the distance, and the sky above was an unsettling shade of gray, almost unnatural. We barely had time to register our surroundings before the man spun on his heel and pointed toward the trees. "You need to go through the woods. Don't stop. Don't look back." "But why?" I asked, breathless, fear rising in me again. "What's out there?" The man didn't answer immediately. He only glanced back over his shoulder, as though making sure we weren't being followed. Then he turned his eyes on me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something in them. Something almost like fear. "Because you're not the only one they're after," he said quietly. "And if you stay here, they'll find you." Before I could ask him to elaborate, the ground beneath us shook. A low rumble vibrated through the earth, and the trees seemed to groan as the wind picked up, turning into something much harsher. My heart pounded in my chest. This wasn't normal. Nothing about this was normal. "We have to go now," the man insisted. "Move." We started running, the sound of our footsteps muffled by the thick underbrush of the forest. The path ahead seemed to stretch on forever, twisting and turning in ways that didn't make sense. Every few moments, I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see something, or someone, chasing us. But the woods were empty. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was out there, watching us. After what felt like an eternity of running, we stopped to catch our breath. I leaned against a tree, my lungs burning, and glanced over at James. He looked just as exhausted. Sweat trickling down his face, but he was still scanning the woods with that same suspicious look. "We're going in circles," he muttered, wiping his forehead. "This doesn't feel right." The man in the suit ignored him, his eyes scanning the horizon as though he was waiting for something, or someone, to appear. "You're not running in circles," he said. "But we are being followed." I froze, my stomach turning over in dread. "Followed? By who?" The man didn't answer at first. He simply turned his head, his gaze lingering on something behind us. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of movement in the trees, a shadow darting between the trunks. My heart skipped a beat, but when I turned, there was nothing there. I swallowed hard, the fear creeping up my spine again. What is happening? The man looked back at us, his eyes intense. The future is already in motion. The wrong choice, the wrong step, you'll lose everything. You need to get to the place where it all started. If you don't, you'll never be able to change it. I stared at him, struggling to process his words. The place where it all started. What did he mean? And how was I supposed to get there if I didn't even know where there was? Where is that? I demanded. But before he could answer, the air shifted again. The trees creaked, and I heard something. No, someone, moving through the woods. I wasn't sure if it was my mind playing tricks on me, but I could swear I heard whispering. Low? Frantic murmurs that sounded familiar. I turned to look at James. His face was pale, his eyes wide with terror. Did you hear that? I nodded, my heart racing again. This was it. Whatever was happening, whatever I had been warned about, it was closing in on us, and there was nowhere to hide. The whispering in the woods grew louder, a haunting murmur that seemed to float through the trees, weaving in and out like it was part of the wind itself. My heart hammered in my chest, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was out there, whatever was watching us, was closing in. James stood beside me, his eyes darting around, scanning the trees. What is that? Who's out there? His voice trembled, and I could see the panic rising in him too. The man in the suit didn't answer immediately. His posture remained tense. As if listening to something that only he could hear, he slowly raised his hand, signaling for us to remain quiet. The murmur from the woods grew louder still, and I swore I could make out words now, just fragments, but it didn't make sense. It sounded like me. I looked at the man in the suit, a new wave of fear washing over me. What's happening? Why are we hearing that? His eyes flickered with something that I couldn't quite read. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, and then he spoke, his voice low and urgent. They're trying to get to you, and they're using your voice to confuse you, to make you doubt what you know. What do you mean? I whispered, barely able to keep my voice steady. He took a slow breath, his gaze still scanning the dark woods around us. The voice you hear, that's not your future self talking to you. It's something else. Something manipulating time, trying to make you think you're making the wrong choices. It's trying to push you off course. A chill ran through me at his words, and I felt the weight of his warning sink into my bones. What do we do? How do we stop it? The man turned his gaze to me, and for the first time, I saw something like desperation flicker in his eyes. You need to trust your instincts, not the voices in your head. The more you question yourself, the easier it is for them to control you. Before I could respond, a sharp sound sliced through the air, like a crack of a branch snapping under pressure. I snapped my head toward the noise, but there was nothing there. The whispering had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that pressed in on us, suffocating. Get moving, the man ordered, his voice suddenly tense. We need to keep moving. They've already started to shift things. James looked at me, his expression a mixture of confusion and fear. What's going on? What's shifting? I could see the doubt in his eyes, but we didn't have time to answer. The man turned and started walking swiftly down the winding path through the woods, his footsteps sure and steady. We had no choice but to follow him, the air growing colder with every passing second. The trees around us seemed to close in, their branches reaching down like gnarled fingers. I glanced back, but there was no sign of anything, or anyone, chasing us. Yet the tension in the air was unbearable, like the forest itself was waiting, holding its breath. Where are we going? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The dread was thick in my chest now, settling in like a weight I couldn't shake off. To where it all began, the man said, his words cold, final. He glanced back over his shoulder at us, his face unreadable. You need to reach the source before it's too late. Otherwise, everything will change. Everything will be lost. I didn't understand what he meant by the source, but I didn't have time to ask. The words felt like they were part of a puzzle that I couldn't solve. Not yet. And then, out of nowhere, the whispering returned. This time, it was louder, more insistent. It felt like it was surrounding us, coming from all directions, but when I looked around, there was no one there. The trees were empty, the shadows long and twisting in strange patterns. But the voice, I could swear it was clearer now. Turn back. Turn back before it's too late. I froze. It was my voice. I knew it was. But it wasn't me. It couldn't be. I didn't know what was happening anymore. My mind was spinning, and for the first time, I wondered if I was losing my grip on reality. Don't listen. The man in the suit snapped, his eyes locking with mine. That's what it wants. To confuse you. To make you think you're making a mistake. It's all a lie. I wanted to believe him. I did. But the voice, it sounded so real, so desperate. But before I could ask him any more questions, the trees ahead of us seemed to part, revealing a clearing. The moonlight filtered through the branches above, casting long shadows on the ground. In the center of the clearing stood something I hadn't expected, a small, crumbling building. Half hidden by the overgrown vegetation, the man stopped in his tracks, his gaze fixed on the building. There was a heaviness in the air now, a sense of finality. "This is it," he said, his voice low. "This is where it all began." I felt a knot form in my stomach. I didn't know why, but I had the overwhelming sense that stepping into that building would change everything. Maybe it would answer all the questions swirling in my mind, or maybe it would trap us in whatever nightmare had started with that strange voicemail. "What is this place?" I asked, my voice trembling. The man didn't answer immediately. He just stared at the building with an almost unreadable expression. "The truth. But be careful. There are things in there that you're not ready for." I didn't know if I was ready for anything, but I didn't have a choice. The moment the voicemail began, I thought it was a prank. A strange, unsettling feeling crept down my spine, but I dismissed it. I had just come back from a long, exhausting day at work, and I was too tired to entertain ridiculous thoughts. But something about that voice, those words, kept me from hitting delete. "Your life will change in 24 hours. I froze. The voice wasn't familiar. It wasn't even human in a way I could explain. It was distant, as if echoing from a place that no longer existed. Yet, the words felt real. Too real. I stared at my phone screen. No name, no number, just that ominous voicemail that made my hands tremble despite myself. It couldn't be real, could it? I was a rational person, not given to believing in supernatural nonsense. But as I played the message again, chills ran down my back. "Tomorrow, everything you know will unravel. Prepare for the truth." I stopped the message right there. My heart pounded in my chest. What did it mean? Who could have sent this? I didn't know anyone who would joke like that. And yet, everything felt wrong, as if I was being warned about something I wasn't supposed to understand. The voice was no longer the only strange thing. It was the timing. Why now? I had been going through a series of strange, unexplainable events lately, things that had made me question my sanity. Small things at first. Missing items that I swore I had just seen moments before, objects rearranged in ways I couldn't explain. But this voicemail, this felt different. It felt like a warning, but a warning from who? The voicemail's words echoed in my mind. Prepare for the truth. Was I supposed to be ready for something? What was I supposed to prepare for? I was already on edge, already second, guessing everything in my life. What if this was the moment it all went sideways? I glanced at the time, 11:48 p.m. I had just come home from a late night meeting, and my mind was too foggy to make sense of what I was hearing. With a sigh, I decided to get some sleep. Maybe I'd just been stressed. Maybe I was overthinking it. But as I tried to close my eyes, the image of the voicemail haunted me. I couldn't shake it. I could feel my heart racing. Like there was something I needed to do, something urgent, but I didn't know what. My mind wandered back to the words I had just heard. Tomorrow. The word kept repeating in my mind. Tomorrow. What would happen tomorrow? And who would send me a message like that? The next morning, I woke up groggy, the events of the previous night still lingering in the back of my mind. I didn't think about the voicemail immediately, not at first. I was distracted by work, meetings, emails. But the nagging feeling that something was wrong followed me throughout the day. At lunch, I checked my phone again, hoping to put the strange voicemail behind me. To my surprise, there was another voicemail. My heart skipped a beat as I clicked it. Have you figured it out yet? The same eerie voice, the same calm, detached tone. But this time, there was something different. A small piece of panic in the voice, something I hadn't heard before. Don't ignore this. It's happening. Prepare. I felt my stomach drop. This couldn't be a coincidence. There was no way 2 voicemails like this could happen in one day. This had to be someone playing a sick joke on me, right? Someone who had somehow figured out my number and was messing with my head. I played the message again, my mind racing. Prepare for what? I muttered to myself. What was happening? Why was I being targeted like this? Just then, my phone buzzed with a notification, an email. It was from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Don't trust the voicemail." I clicked the email open immediately, my fingers trembling. The message was short, simple, and to the point. Stop listening to the voicemail. Everything you hear is true. You don't have much time. I felt my breath catch in my throat. What the hell was going on? I sat back in my chair, trying to make sense of the situation. Someone knew something about me, about my life, about the voicemail. I had to know who was behind this. Who would do something like this? I stared at my phone, the screen flickering in the dim light of my office. I could feel my pulse quicken as the minutes passed. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. But I had no idea where to start. Who could have sent these strange messages, and why? The email seemed to be telling me to stop listening to the voicemail, but that only made me more curious. What was I missing? The minutes felt like hours as I sat there, my thoughts spiraling out of control. It was as though everything in my life had been leading to this moment. This moment when I received the voicemail from the future. But was it really from the future? Or was it some kind of elaborate prank? Just as I was about to dismiss it all as nonsense, my phone buzzed again. A new message. It wasn't a voicemail this time. It was a text. You think this is a joke? Wait until you see what happens in the next hour. It will change everything, and no one will believe you. I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. No one will believe me. What did that mean? What was going to happen in the next hour? My mind raced with possibilities. What could possibly happen that would make this feel so real? The whole thing felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I quickly texted back, hoping for some kind of clarity. Who is this? What do you want? The reply came almost instantly. The truth. I stared at the message, trying to understand. What was the truth? What was I supposed to be looking for? And why did it feel like I was running out of time? Then, as if on cue, the lights in my office flickered and went out. My phone buzzed once more, and I jumped. This time, the voicemail was different. The voice was no longer distant. It was right there, in my ear. You've been warned. The connection cut off immediately, leaving me with only silence and the overwhelming feeling that whatever was coming was no longer a joke. I bolted from my chair, grabbing my bag and phone. My mind screamed that I needed to get out of there, fast. But where could I go? Who could I turn to? No one would believe me. No one had ever received a message like this. This wasn't something you could explain away. As I ran out of my office, I checked the time. It was 2:45 p.m. The message had said the event would happen in the next hour, and the clock was ticking. I had no choice but to wait. The truth was coming. I could feel it in every fiber of my being. And whatever happened next, I wasn't sure I was ready for it. When my phone rang that night, I wasn't expecting anything extraordinary. I mean, it was just a normal Tuesday, just another mundane evening spent in my small, dimly lit apartment. The kind of night that drags on, where the world feels distant, muted by the hum of old appliances and the low glow of the television that played some forgotten rerun. It was only when I checked the caller ID that my pulse quickened. The number on the screen was unfamiliar, but that wasn't the reason for the sudden jolt in my chest. The reason was the date. The voicemail had been left for me from tomorrow. Not just any tomorrow, but a tomorrow in 2 weeks' time. I stared at the phone screen in disbelief. My mind racing, I replayed the message, almost unwilling to believe it. It started with a chillingly familiar voice, my own. But it was not my voice from today, from this moment. No. This was a voice that seemed older, worn down by time in ways that I couldn't quite understand. And the message. I don't know who you are, but if you're listening to this, then you've already made the wrong choice. Turn back. It's too late. My blood ran cold, the air thick with dread. I didn't recognize the voice, yet it was me, my voice. But something was off. A hint of panic, a quiet desperation underneath each word. It was like a version of myself reaching back through time, pleading for me to stop, to change something, anything. But what was I supposed to change? What choice had I made that would lead me down such a twisted path? The message was so cryptic, and yet the urgency was unmistakable. I rushed to check the time to make sure this wasn't some prank, but as I glanced at the clock, I froze. It was 10:32 p.m. The voicemail had been sent 2 weeks from now. How could that even be possible? I started to pace the small living room, my mind spiraling into confusion. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound that could be heard, but it felt like the walls themselves were closing in on me. My fingers shook as I held the phone in my hand, replaying the message over and over again, trying to piece together what was going on. A voicemail from the future. How was that even possible? As the seconds ticked by, the reality of it all began to sink in. If this voicemail was real, then my future self was trying to warn me about something. But what could it be? The questions multiplied in my mind. What was I supposed to avoid? What had I done? I couldn't make sense of it, but I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just some glitch in the system. This was something far bigger, far more sinister than I could ever have imagined. Without thinking, I did the one thing I probably shouldn't have. I called the number back. The phone rang once, twice, then clicked, followed by the sound of someone picking up on the other end. But the voice that answered, it wasn't what I expected. Is this you? The voice on the other end whispered, almost breathless. Who is this? I asked, my voice trembling. You don't recognize me, do you? The voice chuckled, but it wasn't a laugh of humor. It was dark, knowing, as if the person knew some terrible secret I was about to uncover. No, I whispered, my heart hammering in my chest. I don't. Who are you? I'm you, the voice replied. And there it was again, that familiar yet unfamiliar tone. My voice, but different, like an echo from the future. I'm you, the voice repeated. I'm you in 2 weeks. And I'm telling you, you need to stop this. It's already too late for me, but there's still time for you to turn back. The words hit me like a physical blow, leaving me breathless. I didn't know whether I should be terrified or confused. What do you mean? I managed to choke out. What happened? What's going on? I can't explain everything, the voice said hurriedly. There isn't time. Just know that the choice you're about to make, it's not just your future you're gambling with. It's everyone's. I felt my throat tighten, my mouth dry. The weight of those words pressed down on me, but I couldn't make sense of them. Who else? I asked, barely able to breathe. Who else will be affected? There was a long pause on the other end, the silence almost suffocating. I could hear something in the background, static, a soft hum, like interference. Then the voice came back, low and urgent. You'll know soon enough. Don't trust anyone. Not even your closest friends. And whatever you do, do not make contact with the person who's going to reach out to you tomorrow. If you do, everything will change. It's already too late for me. But for you, you still have a chance. I felt a chill run through me as I listened. Who is this person? I asked, but the voice was gone. The line went dead. I sat there in the dark, phone pressed to my ear, feeling the weight of the conversation sink in. It didn't make sense. It couldn't make sense. I was just one person, living in a city full of millions. How could any of this call, this warning, have anything to do with me? But then I remembered the date on the voicemail. 2 weeks from now. The twist hit me like a freight train. What if this wasn't some freak occurrence? What if this was real? I looked down at my phone again, my finger hovering over the screen. The voicemail was still there, just sitting in my inbox, waiting. Waiting for me to listen again, waiting for me to do something about it. And then I realized something even more horrifying. There was no way for me to trace the number, no way to call it back, no way to even find out if anyone else had received the same message. I was alone in this. Alone with a voice from my future. My future. If I didn't take action, if I didn't figure this out soon, the future I was heading towards could become the very nightmare that my future self was trying to warn me about. And I didn't know what was coming next. But whatever it was, I was about to find out. There was no turning back now. The night dragged on, the weight of the conversation still pressing heavily on my mind. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant hum from the outside world felt amplified, as if the universe was conspiring to heighten my paranoia. I couldn't shake the image of that eerie voicemail. The cryptic words echoing in my mind, don't trust anyone. Not even your closest friends. It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. The strangest part was the sense of urgency that clung to me. My future self was me. I should have been able to trust my own voice, yet the message was nothing like the calm, measured tone I used every day. The voice was panicked, scared even. And the warning, it sounded like a plea. I glanced at the clock. It was nearing 1 a.m. My mind raced, thoughts tumbling over each other. I should have been sleeping, but sleep felt impossible now, weighed down by the creeping anxiety that had gripped me since hearing that message. I needed to think. I needed to understand what was happening. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed my phone again and scrolled through the list of contacts, pausing at the name of an old friend. James. We'd lost touch over the years, but we'd been close once, back when everything in life was simple. Maybe he'd know what was going on. Maybe he'd have some insight into all of this. I tapped his name and waited as the phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. The anticipation made my heart thud harder in my chest. And then the call was answered. "Hey, it's James," he said groggily. I could hear the shuffle of him adjusting his position in bed. "James, I need help," I said before I could stop myself, the words spilling out. Something weird happened. I got a voicemail from the future, and it's freaking me out. There was a long pause, and I could practically hear him processing the absurdity of what I'd said. What? He asked, his voice laced with disbelief. A voicemail from the future. Are you serious right now? Yeah, I'm serious. I took a deep breath. It's from me, but not from right now. It's from 2 weeks from now, and it's a warning. Something bad is going to happen if I don't make the right choice. And I have no idea what the choice is. There was another silence. Longer this time. James wasn't one to keep me waiting. He always had something to say, whether it was a joke or his typical blunt commentary. But tonight, I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. I don't know, man. That sounds insane. He laughed nervously, but it didn't sound genuine. Maybe you're just tired. Maybe you're just overthinking things. You haven't been sleeping well, right? I know what I heard, James. My voice grew more urgent, and it wasn't a dream. It felt real. It was me on that voicemail. But the thing is, it's not just a warning. The message said that I shouldn't trust anyone, not even you. That I can't trust anyone. A chill passed through the line, and I could hear him exhale sharply. That's heavy, man. I'm not sure what to tell you. Please, just listen, I pleaded. I need your help, James. I don't know what's going on, but I need someone to tell me I'm not crazy. Another pause. A long one. All right, man, I'll help you out. Just calm down, okay? We'll figure this out. But you said you got this voicemail from yourself? 2 weeks in the future. How do you know it's real? I don't know. I can't explain it. But what if it is real? What if this really is me, trying to warn me? My voice trembled as I said the words out loud. A part of me wanted to believe it was just a mistake, that I had somehow misinterpreted things. But I knew deep down, something wasn't right. There was no time to waste, no time for second guessing. What exactly did the voicemail say? What did the wrong choice mean? James asked, his voice more serious now. I took a breath, recalling the words as they had been etched in my mind. It said not to trust anyone, that my future was already ruined, but there's still time for me to change things, and to not make contact with someone who would reach out to me. Tomorrow. James repeated, his voice low. Who is this person? That's the thing. I don't know. But whoever they are, I can't make contact with them. Or everything will change. The voicemail said I'll know soon enough. Shit. James muttered, almost to himself. That's a lot to take in, man. You're really starting to freak me out. Tell me about it, I whispered. I don't know what's happening, but I can't ignore this. I have to find out what happens next, and I need you to help me, James. I need you to be here. You have to be. Okay. Man, James said, his voice steady now. I'll be there first thing in the morning. Let's see if we can figure this out together. Maybe it's something simpler than you think. Maybe we're just missing something. Thanks, I said, relief flooding my chest. I don't know what I'd do without you. Just stay calm, okay? We'll get to the bottom of this. As I hung up, the silence settled back in. But the questions kept swirling in my mind. Who would reach out to me tomorrow? What was the wrong choice? And most terrifying of all, what was going to happen if I made the wrong move? It felt like a tangled web, and I was standing right in the middle of it. Every decision I made now seemed like it could send me down a path I couldn't come back from. The phone screen glowed dimly in the darkness as I stared at it. There was no turning back. Tomorrow would come, and I had no idea what would unfold, but one thing was certain. I wasn't going to make the same mistake as my future self. Not if I could help it. I didn't sleep a wink that night. My mind churned over the same words again and again, the message repeating itself in a loop. Don't trust anyone, not even your closest friends. The urgency of that warning hung over me like a dark cloud, heavy and suffocating. The fear that had taken root in me last night hadn't gone away. It had only grown stronger. The eerie certainty that my life was on the verge of change, maybe forever, gnawed at me. When morning finally arrived, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. I'd expected to feel some sense of relief after talking to James, but instead, his words had done nothing to calm my nerves. If anything, they made everything worse. He was supposed to be my anchor, the one person who could ground me in the chaos of this situation. But now, even his reassurance felt hollow, like a lifeline that might snap at any moment. By the time James arrived at my apartment, the air between us was thick with tension. He didn't say much at first, just gave me a quick nod when he stepped inside and looked around as though he, too, could feel the weight of whatever was happening. I didn't have the energy to pretend everything was fine. I led him straight to the couch, where I had been sitting for hours, replaying the voicemail over and over in my head. "I've been thinking about what you said," James said quietly as he sat down beside me. "The voicemail. From the future. It sounds insane, but there's something about it that feels real. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but your reaction, the way you're so sure it was you, it's convincing. Yeah, it's real." "James," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I don't know how to explain it either, but it was me. And the worst part is, I don't know who to trust. Not even you. And that terrifies me." His expression faltered for a split second, just long enough for me to notice. But it was gone before I could process it, replaced by a serious look as he rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "All right," he said, his voice measured. "So, we're dealing with a time loop or something. And you've got a decision to make today that could change everything. Is that it?" I nodded, biting my lip. "I think so." The voicemail said I'd know who to avoid, but it didn't say why. It only warned me not to make contact. James exhaled sharply, clearly processing everything. "Well, if I'm being honest, man, I have no idea what's going on here. But maybe it's time we start looking for answers. You mentioned something about someone reaching out to you today, right? Could this person be connected to all of this?" I froze. My heart skipped a beat at the mention of someone reaching out. The thought hadn't really hit me until now. What if the person the voicemail referred to was already on their way? What if they were someone I knew? Or worse, someone I hadn't even met yet? "Yeah," I said, my voice a little too shaky for comfort. But the voicemail didn't say who they were. It just told me to be careful, and that I couldn't trust anyone. James looked at me carefully, his brows furrowing. What if the voicemail was a warning about this? About me being here right now? I stiffened, a sudden wave of panic rising in my chest. "What do you mean?" "Well, think about it," he continued, leaning forward. "You've been acting like you can't trust anyone, but what if the voicemail was about this exact moment? What if the danger isn't someone you'll meet later, but someone right in front of you? Like, maybe I'm the one who you shouldn't trust." The words hit me like a physical blow. I recoiled slightly, unsure whether to laugh or scream. "Are you serious?" I said, almost in disbelief. "I'm just saying," James shrugged. "What if this is all part of the loop? What if the reason you're getting all these messages is because the universe is trying to tell you to stop trusting me? That's the only thing that makes sense. You're looking for answers, and I'm here. But what if?" Before he could finish his sentence, my phone buzzed. I almost jumped out of my skin. The screen lit up with a new notification. Unknown number calling. My heart raced. I hadn't expected it to happen so soon. It had only been hours since James and I had spoken about the voicemail, and here it was. Someone was calling me. Someone from the future, or someone who was meant to be part of this twisted narrative. James stared at the phone, his eyes widening. "This is it. This is the moment. Answer it,"